Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage your event MC for this afternoon, Rebecca Snauffer.
So welcome everyone to the LinkedIn Technology Summit, the event where we look at how technology is shaping the way that we sell today and how you as sales leaders can use that technology to adapt and transform your sales teams. I am Rebecca Snauffer, and I am the Director of LinkedIn Sales Solutions for the UK, and I am going to be your event host for today. Now, appropriately, for a technology summit, it's not just those of us in the room that are participating today. So I would like to invite and welcome those of you who are attending via our live stream. Now, this is the first technology summit that we at LinkedIn have hosted, and it couldn't have come at a better time. For the last decade or so, technology has changed the way that we sell, the way that our sales professionals reach out to their prospects and to their customer. But interestingly, this innovation is still in its infancy, and it's actually where we go next that is most exciting. So over the next few hours, we have assembled a fantastic lineup of speakers who are going to talk about how salespeople can thrive through this new era of sales and what technology can do to help your sales teams adapt and transform. Now, in a moment, actually, no, not in a moment, shortly I will be handing over to Lindsay Edwards, who is our Senior Director for Product Management. I will also then be inviting to the stage a number of sales leaders for a panel discussion where they will talk about how technology is changing the way that their sales teams work today, and also how they're going to bring more of those solutions into their technology sales stack. And then after we've broken for coffee, I will be bringing to the stage one of the most acclaimed leaders of recent times, somebody who has consistently managed teams through change and also found sources of competitive advantage to help those teams evolve. Therefore, I am thrilled to welcome to the LinkedIn Technology Summit, Sir Clive Woodward. Now, before I hand over to our first speaker of the day, there are a few housekeeping points I need to share with you, so please bear with me. The one that you've all been waiting for. The Wi-Fi name for today is the Ned, and there's no password. Should you need the bathroom, out of the doors, to the left and to the right. I feel a bit like an air hostess now. And for your refreshment, there are water bottles underneath the seats. They aren't plastic, they are refillable, and they are yours to take with you when you leave today. Now, as we go through today's event, we would really like to hear your comments, your thoughts on the various different topics that are going to be broached. But more specifically, we do have a question that we would like you to answer. And that question is, what are the key characteristics winning sales teams need to succeed? Now, please feel free to post your answers on LinkedIn or your own social media channels using the hashtag LinkedInSalesTech. There will be a prize at the end. It's an electronic moleskin and a LinkedIn swag bag. So think about it as we go through and comment away to your heart's content. Now, without further ado, I'm going to invite our first speaker to the stage. LinkedIn's Vice President of Sales Solutions for EMEA and LATAM, Liam Halpin.
Thank you, Becky. Rebecca, sorry. We call her Becky. I was wondering who Rebecca Schaffner was when it was announced. So my name is Liam Halpin. I lead the LinkedIn Sales Solutions business, Europe, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, that's them all. So it's a pretty wide region. I get to see a lot of people, a lot of different businesses. But I have been in B2B sales since 1991, 28 years ago. And before we go into modern sales technology, I wanted to talk a little bit about a trip down memory lane, a little bit of nostalgia. So this is what sales technology looked like for me in 1991. We had this amazing device that meant that I could speak to people who were not in the same room as me. fantastic thing sitting on my desk called a telephone. The source of my customer information was this ratty old, that had been left by some previous salesperson, Rolodex with handwritten hieroglyphics. That was our source of data for customer information. So pretty modern times compared to the 1800s. So 8 years later, we got a little bit more sophisticated. So now we had mobile phones. Now some of us had desktop computers or laptop computers. And it was also when CRM started making an emergence. So now, I could communicate with customers when I was on the road. Now I could record information about my customers. Now the rep that was going to take over from me didn't need to interpret my handwriting because we had a permanent system of record. And importantly then, for the people who were leading the businesses at that point, now you started to gain statistical information about your customers. How long was it between an opportunity being entered in CRM and salespeople closing it? So suddenly the rise of sales operations and an understanding of business analysis. So just eight years later. But as impressive as this was at the time, this is the sales technology landscape that we live in today. The sales technology landscape is completely unrecognizable to how it appeared at the turn of the millennium. It's massively diversified and transforms how we work, how we engage with buyers, the way that we plan, the way that we manage our teams. Every single facet of a sale can be enhanced by sales technology. And according to Sales Hacker recent report, 950 different vendors of sales technology globally. And in the last 12 months, that's an increase of 15%. So this is a massive technology space, a massive industry. The industry is valued at a scope of up to $50 billion. So I just want to do a quick show of hands. Who here has heard the phrase data is the new oil? Okay, so practically everyone in the room. And actually, that phrase was coined here in Britain by Clive Humby, the founder of dunnhumby, who were the company that were behind Tesco's loyalty card system several years ago. And it's a great case of using technology to transform a business, and Tesco were leading on that for many, many years. And literally, data is the fuel that's driving this explosion in sales technology. The reason why all of these sales technologies companies exist is because there's a massive amount of data. As a species right now, this is like a fascinating thing, that every 10 minutes now, we are generating the same amount of data that the entire history of humanity had generated up to 2003. Now, not all of it is cat videos, but there's a huge amount of data. There's a complete explosion of data. And much of this data that's sitting there and being generated is relevant to sales. And it is like the new oil because it's valuable, and the more you refine it, the more valuable it becomes as well. So there's another reason why this analogy is particularly relevant. So this is a photograph of the deserts of Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia came into being as a country, the size of country that we know it today, in the early 1930s. And it was believed that there was no oil in Saudi Arabia. And they believed that because they had discovered oil in what's now Iran, but they had done extensive searches in Oman and Yemen, and had come to the conclusion that based on the topology within Saudi Arabia, there wouldn't be any oil. So if you had sat down with King Saud at the beginning of the 1930s and said, where's all the value in this country from a land perspective? He would have been talking about the lands where agriculture was possible, where water flows, where people are able to live. And if you'd said, hey, what about that stuff over there? He would have just said, that's the desert. That's valueless. But what happened was, in 1938, the second largest oil reserve that has ever been discovered was uncovered using technology to explore, technology to drill, and technology to extract. And they discovered what was estimated to be 268 billion barrels of oil. An incredible perspective. So from a technology perspective, this oil rig that you see here is somewhat like the brick mobile phone and the very basic laptop or desktop computer and the very basic CRM. Now they had a mechanism to get at the resource that they didn't know they had, that they were sitting on it for millennia. But if you go to Saudi Arabia now, there's about 63 of these types of facilities spread all across the country. Because as technology moves on, crude oil on its own is not valuable. You've got to refine it, and there's different types of crude oil. And how you do that is with technology. So 63 facilities dotted across the desert, and many of the derricks to extract the oil. So you don't just have one oil derrick in Saudi Arabia pumping the oil out. In sales, we now have the equivalent of tapping into a resource that everybody is sitting on. And that is the relationship capital of all of the people who work for your company. You're already sitting on this, and you can get at it, but you just can't, you need technology's help to get there. But there's a question, are we prepared to make the investment? How far have we really come along? When I look around the UK, when I look around Europe, and on my travels in different parts of the world, outside of North America, what we see is that when we ask sales leaders, we ask business leaders, what is your sales technology stack? A lot of the time, it's still mobile phone, laptop, CRM. And in a lot of cases, in a lot of large companies, a lot of small companies, now albeit they're better mobile phones and better laptops and better CRM. But fundamentally, 20 years later, a lot of organizations haven't invested beyond that technology stack that's effectively 20 years old. However, when we look at what's happening in the United States, we see a plethora of sales technologies being used. So we asked ourselves a question. At LinkedIn, we've got a lot of data, about 660 million professionals around the world. So what if we looked at the number of employees that work for those 950 technology companies, and where are they? So we took a sample set of the 120 largest. And this is what we found. We've looked at all those 120 companies, how many employees do they have in Western Europe, including Britain, and we've looked at it from the perspective of how many they have. And here's what we found. Companies that are in sales technology space have 3 times more salespeople in North America than they do in Western Europe, which shows what they're setting up to meet the demands of their customers, and that's the focus. So that's one data point. We then thought about, is there any other data that we can find on LinkedIn that would help us understand, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Is this competitive advantage for American companies over European companies? And this is what we found. And I was surprised by this. There's two things that sales leaders worry about, lots of things that sales leaders worry about, but 2 of the things that sales leaders worry about is, are my highly trained salespeople going to leave my organization? So we look at the attrition of salespeople. And the second thing is, how long can I keep salespeople at my organization to maximize return on investment? And what we found is that attrition in Western Europe is nearly 1/3 higher than in North America. And I was surprised at that, because if you think about the labor law environment that exists in North America versus the labor law environment in European countries, it's a lot easier to move people in and out of the organization in North America. So fewer salespeople are leaving North American companies. The second thing is when it looks at tenure. And the average tenure for a salesperson in Western Europe, just over 4 years. The average tenure for an American salesperson, over 5 years. So American companies are losing less people to attrition and keeping their people for longer. Again, possibly a competitive advantage. We then decided to look at some digital skills reports. And if you're of my generation, then I was not at a disadvantage from a digital skills perspective to an American person who was the same age as me. However, when it comes to millennials, the skill level for American millennials is at 65%, whereas Western Europe it's 58%. So we've got a small gap, or an appreciable gap, but it's a lot over the Gen X and the baby boomers. So there's a workforce that are receptive to digital technology. Now, I've committed to myself to stop using the word millennial after today. This is the last time I will say millennial. And the reason for it is that millennials, 10 years ago when we used that term, everyone immediately thought of a hipster down in Hoxton roaming around looking for somebody's Wi-Fi on his skateboard. And that's not who the millennials are. the oldest millennials are now 38 years of age. The millennials are simply now the professionals that are working in our businesses. And what we know about millennials is that 59% of them believe that state-of-the-art technology is what they need to be able to do their jobs. That's what they crave, that's what they need. And these are exactly the top experienced salespeople that your business needs to retain, your business needs to attract. And they know how to get results, and they know that what they need to get that result. And technology is a key part of that. So going back to the desert, we clearly see a potential competitive advantage gap between North American companies and European companies. And a lot of it has been driven by a lack of investment in sales technology. And it's worth reminding ourselves about these reservoirs of relationship capital. If you think about if you're selling your business and you've got your stock and you've got your customers and you've got all your books of business, but also every company has a balance sheet item called goodwill. And when you disentangle or disaggregate what's inside goodwill, your relationships, the relationship capital in your business. So how do you understand the full extent of your relationship capital is a question we're going to talk about today as well. And technology is a way of understanding the relationship capital, but also providing you with a way of extracting it, just like oil, because there's a lot of it there, but it's below the sand. Now, here's the question. Are we advocating that you go out today, go to your procurement department, we'll give you this slide if you want it, and say, I need to buy all of this for everybody by next week, or we're going to miss out on business? We're not advocating that. When you're trying to understand what is the right tech stack to invest in, what else is going on? What is happening in the market? Because buyers are different, the market is different to the market that we operated in 20 years ago. So we've looked at what's happened in B2B relationship sales going back over the last 40, 50 years. And believe it or not, there was a time where face-to-face sales was innovation. There was a time when organizations like IBM and Xerox became famous organizations for salespeople to work at because the quality of their field sales teams. That was a thing in the industry, and their ability to train people, really send highly professional salespeople out with sales methodology, that was innovation. And that drove competitive advantage for those companies against the traditional way that the people had done it. But if you think about then the computer industry coming into the 1990s, there was a wave of disruption led by a former employer of mine, Dell, where suddenly now B2B sales for computers via telesales, supported by CRM, supported by marketing automation. So now it was possible to get to more customers in a high-value relationship by using different technology. So a different approach supported by technology. And the second thing that happened is that it used to be that your salesperson was your everything. Your salesperson was the pre-sales person, they were the technical salesperson, they were the commercial salesperson, and certainly when I started my sales career, you were expected to be all of those. In the mid-90s and into the 2000s, we've seen role specialization. So people who hunt for business, sales development representatives, specific reps for acquisition, overlay reps for different types of technology that you sell in your business. So role specialization became a thing. And again, those companies that invested in role specialization eked out competitive advantage. But here we are in 2019, and it would be hard to find any organization that doesn't have CRM. Does anyone not have CRM? You're in a safe place. Okay, right. So everyone has CRM. Everyone has some form of telesales. Everyone has some form of role specialization. So when everybody has it, it's not competitive advantage anymore. So what's happening in the marketplace is the market is increasingly becoming more complex. It is harder for a B2B salesperson to do their job today versus 20 years ago. Nobody tell anybody who works for me that that's the case, but that is the case. The second thing is everyone's using the technology, so it's not a competitive advantage. So we believe that the next wave of innovation that's available to B2B organizations is how do you build relationships at scale? How do you use technology to enable a salesperson to know as much as possible about what's going on with their customer without having to get in a car and drive to every one of their customers every day. How do you do that? How do you meet the demands of the buyers? And we'll talk about that, the demands of the buyers in a minute. I just want a quick show of hands. Who has been at a LinkedIn sales conference like this before? Okay, so, because I was going to do these slides where you've probably seen these slides before. So some of you have seen these slides before. So Gartner CEB have been tracking how many people on average are involved in a B2B relationship sale. And back in 2016, it was 5.4. They updated it in 2017 to 6.8. And we've recently done some work with them, specifically with technology companies. And if you are selling data center type complex technologies, your buying circle is 12 to 14 people. So there's a lot more people involved than when people used to get budgets and a salesperson just had to deal with the one person. In fact, I remember being on training courses that were entitled Finding the Decision Maker. Okay, doesn't happen anymore. So it's a little bit more complex because there's more people. The second thing then is that this is based on an Accenture report. 77% of buyers don't believe that salespeople understand them or can help them. And a lot of what's driving that is the technological shift that we've had since 1995, which is you don't need a salesperson for product information anymore. There's this thing called the internet, okay? And the people who show up as product specialists, as the salesperson, people don't value that relationship anymore, and they used to. So 77% of buyers don't believe that salespeople can help. And this one, which is, can anyone put your hand in the air if you have bought something for your business because you got an email from somebody at another company that you didn't know? One person, okay? So the slide says 3% click-through rate. There's about 140 people in this room, so it's less than 1%. It's also becoming increasingly more difficult to get to customers. So this figure of 9.1, it used to be 6 attempts for an acquisition salesperson to land a meeting with a customer. It's now up to 9. And also CSO Insights have been tracking how many reps globally have been hitting their target consistently. And this number has reduced for 17 quarters in a row. There's now only 53% of salespeople globally working across multiple industries are hitting plan. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't see quotas coming down in companies anytime soon. They normally go up. Now I know we have Sir Clive here, and this is a bit of this slide's a bit of an interesting one for me because you've got guys playing soccer or football as it's called in Britain. I have zero interest, don't follow any team, never played soccer, but I decided it's better than some of the analogies that I used. I do a lot of cycling, and I was going to talk about augmentation in cycling, but that's got different connotations, so we're going to focus on soccer. So if you think about how soccer has evolved, I wrote a blog post about this. Fundamentally, how you would put a team together in 1960 or 70 or 80 or even as far as 1991. As a football manager, you would go and look for raw talent. Can I find some kids that are really good at playing soccer? Then what you would do is you would give that talent discipline, structure, rigor, and then you'd put them on a field against somebody else who was doing the same. And if you look at some of the great teams, Brazil 1960 World Cup winning team, that sort of team. And now you look at an average team today. An average team today is still going out and finding raw talent. The average team is still putting structure, discipline, and rigor. But now we have sports nutrition, very specific dietary requirements that are scientific, based on GI ratings and all that sort of stuff. Now you have telemetry systems in the back of jerseys. So if you wonder what that little hump is on the back of a sports jersey, it's a little telemetry unit that's measuring how far did the player run, how much pressure do they put on different legs. So the information that's available, you've got sports psychology, et cetera, and it goes on and on and on. And now you could put the best team in the world from 1960 or 1970 on the pitch against an average team today, and the average team would win. Why? Because they've been enabled with technology. They've eked out that competitive advantage. So this sort of stuff has fundamentally changed in sport. And again, you still need people who can sell. What we're advocating is not that we're automate. B2B relationship selling is B2B relationship selling, and technology is about helping. So think about the analogy of oil again. So if relationship capital is the resource, and you can tap into it and you can refine it and you can use it to accelerate growth in your business. On the right-hand side, we've mapped an organization. It's a pretty large organization, and this is a visual representation of the interconnectivity of their salespeople on LinkedIn.com. So what you'll see is it's pretty fragmented, it's in silos, it's in pockets, it's in groupings, and there's not a huge amount of interconnectivity. On the left-hand side, what we've mapped is, what would that visualization look like if the vast majority of salespeople at that company were connected together? And we've got this big amorphous blob. That never happens. That is a simulation, and I'll give you a great example of it. So I've been at LinkedIn for just over 3 years. I spent 5 years at Dell prior to that. There are 6,000 salespeople at LinkedIn, and when I was at Dell, there was 40,000 salespeople. So there's 46,000 people to achieve this blob on the left I would have had to connect it to. I am connected to a total of just under 4,000 people on LinkedIn. So in theory, you could do it. In practice, it never happens. And that's where, again, technology comes into place, because just doing this manually is not an option. So as a result of underinvestment in technology, businesses are missing out on opportunity. And how do we know that? Well, we've taken a company who have 4,100 salespeople globally. And in the last quarter, they have looked for 2,560 people on LinkedIn.com, so free LinkedIn.com. And those people they've been looking for are decision makers in the industry in which they operate. So these are potential clients. Because they're not using technology to understand their relationship capital, here's what they missed. They missed that in 1,435 of those searches, that somebody at their company on their sales team knows somebody that they were searching for. So imagine what that's like, that somebody realizes, oh, hang on a sec, this person in my company knows this person, and I'm not connected to this other person at the company. Then it's a warm introduction. And we'll talk about the power of warm introductions in a moment. And they missed out on warm introductions into IKEA, EasyJet, Europcar, Honda, Groupon, and BNP Paribas. And this is a pretty big company with a large professional sales force. The sales force are not doing anything wrong. They simply don't have the technology to surface that information to them. So why do connections matter? What is the power of a warm introduction? So what we've looked at on LinkedIn.com, this is across our 660 million members, and this is your propensity to accept a connection request from somebody else on LinkedIn. So if you went to the same primary school, or you went to the same secondary school as somebody, and they reach out to you on LinkedIn, you have a 53% propensity to connect to that person. Okay? The other 47 were bullying you. So that's pretty powerful, okay? But if you think about that, the usefulness of that from a business perspective, the amount of people that you went to school with is a finite number for many years. The one that you can influence is where you've got common connections. And what we see is that having common connections with somebody is a very powerful motivator for somebody to accept a connection request. The more common connections you have, the more likely you are to connect. So if you're reaching out to somebody and you're writing a custom note to say, you know, I've spoken to John, we both know Mary, we both worked here, you're more receptive to that, and that enables you to get more connections. But this isn't about collecting connections for the sake of collecting connections. What we find is in sales teams where you've enabled a high level of interconnectivity, either they are interconnected or they're using technology to interconnect. What we're seeing is that the salespeople are performing twice as many searches for decision makers. And that's driven by confidence that using the platform, they will find the people that they need to find to help grow your business. We see that they engage and view decision maker profiles at a rate of 3x. And importantly, they connect to decision makers 3 times more than people who are not highly interconnected. That ability to get warm introductions powers your ability to get more connections. And the beauty of the technology is that you don't need to get everybody to connect together at your company. So everybody who's using Sales Navigator develops a path to be able to pool everybody's relationship capital together. And then everybody who is using the technology has the ability to drill into that relationship capital. We also, our recommendation is don't buy any point solutions. There is no one product that fits everything. So we've built Sales Navigator so that it connects to other platforms, that it can exist at the center as the relationship capital, and then connecting to the most common CRMs, connecting to marketing engines, and in fact, even connecting to video conferencing systems. So Zoom is up there. Somebody asked me, why would you want Sales Navigator connected to Zoom? Well, imagine you're in a Zoom video conference and somebody has joined and you don't know who they are. Okay? Has that ever happened to anybody? Rolling over their picture in the Zoom window will drop down a mini version of their LinkedIn profile. So now, not only do you see a mini version of their LinkedIn profile, but you also get to see common connections. And live, on the fly, you're able to intertwine that into your sales conversation. So super powerful to have it at the center. The other thing is that buyers are much more demanding today. When I was a rep back in 1991, you would arrive in a customer's office and you would say something like, hey, before I start talking about my stuff, what do you do around here? What's your background? What's going on in your industry? And the customer would actually react positively to that. Oh, this person wants to understand our business. Buyers expect you to know now before you walk through the door. And then if you think about it, 1991, those questions would have built credibility for a salesperson. In 2019, you destroy your credibility because the person is thinking, I can't believe this person is wasting my time. They arranged a meeting with me, and they haven't even looked me up on LinkedIn, and they haven't even researched my company, and they don't know what's going on in my industry. Okay? So it's more difficult for salespeople because the buyer expectation is that they know about their industry, that they know about their company, they know about their influencers, and they also know a little bit about that person. Now, the way we used to find out all that information was tea and biscuits. You would drive around to all your customers and have a cup of tea with them, okay? So that's not scalable, and also now you have more buyers, so it's just not possible anymore. So you need to stay on top of your customer. And what we've looked at is we've built Sales Navigator and to integrate with other platforms, but also be a viable proposition to surface information for salespeople throughout the cycle. So if you look over, key alert, a customer changed roles. So 1 in 5 decision makers change job every 12 months. If you're dealing with a CTO or a CMO and they've been enrolled for more than 3 years, the statistical chance of them moving this year is over 30%. So 30% of CMOs move every 3 years. And senior executives, if they're around about 3 years, they either move in their company or they move externally. So getting a trigger to say this person has left or joined your company, and this is how you may know this new person, or this is where that person has gone to generate a new lead for you, super important. So we've built Sales Navigator to live across the life cycle of a customer. And is this about just connecting LinkedIn connections so you can stand up at a conference and say, I've got 4,000 LinkedIn connections? No, it's because connections matter. So we did a large exercise last year with 1,000 customers globally across a whole myriad of different industries. And we analyzed 600,000 sales opportunities in their CRM with their permission. And this is what we found, that the opportunities where the sales reps had 6+ connections, they were getting a win rate of 34% increase. So we're winning more business with 6+ connections. And the amount of time it took to close deals was 10% less than those people who didn't have 6+ connections. So pretty powerful. Connections matter when it comes to winning business and also having an impact on the sales cycle. However, scarily, across all 600,000 of those opportunities, we also saw that only 7% of the opportunity base had more than 6 connections. And the vast majority, 82%, had but 1 connection. So clearly there's an opportunity to drive some competitive advantage by driving more connections, enabling salespeople to use technology. The wave has already started. This is not something that we're talking about that is happening a year from now, 2 years from now. There's a large number of customers globally using Sales Navigator, using other sales technology. There's proportionately more American companies using this sales technology. So the question is, if you're competing against American companies in Europe or you're trying to sell into America, are you putting your team at a competitive disadvantage? And equally, if American companies are selling into your markets, are you putting your teams at competitive disadvantages? So the question is, do you want to get left behind, or is this something that you want to do? Thank you for listening to me. I'm now going to hand over to the lady who makes all the magic happen in her lab in San Francisco. So Lindsay, come on up and tell us about the magic.
Hello, everyone. So I have to say, I usually use Beyonce as my walk-up music, but because we're live streaming today, the rights were a little out of our budget, so didn't get my Beyonce boost today. So thank you so much all for being here. Thank you on the live stream as well. My name's Lindsay. I'm responsible for product management for Sales Navigator. So what that means is that I work with our software engineers back in Sunnyvale and San Francisco in California to build and decide what we're going to do next to enhance Sales Navigator. So hoping to share some exciting upcoming enhancements with you all today. But to set the foundation and to start off, I thought it was important to really talk about why we're here today, why Sales Navigator exists, and how it came to be. So I know there were some of you that have been to an event before, so if you've heard this story, stick with me for just a minute. So back in 2014, I was a product manager at LinkedIn working on our marketing solutions business at the time, but I was there in Mountain View on our original campus as Google was literally circling and sort of enclosing on LinkedIn. We ended up sort of moving down south a little ways to get out of that. But we had this interesting period of time where we were really analyzing our premium subscription business. And premium subscriptions just means the people that were coming into LinkedIn, putting in their credit card and buying extra access to information and insights on LinkedIn. And we found something really interesting. Our assumption was that premium subscribers were largely job seekers, and we saw this behavior. So people would come to LinkedIn, put in their credit card. We would see a lot of these job-seeking activities happening. They would get a new job because they would update their profile. We hoped, of course, we were part of finding them their next dream job. And then they'd cancel their subscription, which was okay, because that's really what we were in it for. But we did an analysis, again, back in the summer of 2014, and to our surprise, more than 30% of all premium subscribers were salespeople. And they weren't looking for jobs because they were keeping those subscriptions for months and years at a time. So salespeople had naturally found this opportunity to come to LinkedIn, subscribe to our premium products, and help them better network, find prospective leads and accounts, maintain relationships with customers. But this happened all very organically, and while we're building solutions for job seekers, salespeople are getting all this value. So there was a mismatch there, and we had to decide what to do. So we really had two options. We could have decided that we would have people come to LinkedIn, and we would ask if they were a salesperson or a job seeker and build custom solutions otherwise. Or we could build a completely standalone solution just for salespeople, very much as we had for the recruiters of the world. So ultimately, we decided the latter. We decided there was such a distinctive opportunity and use case for salespeople to leverage LinkedIn data to be more successful at their jobs that we needed a standalone product. So in 2014, that's how Sales Navigator was born. We decided to invest and build this standalone application. And I have to say, I'm incredibly proud of how far we've come, but also really excited about some of the things I'm going to share today about where we're going. But one of the things we learned pretty early in this journey in building a product for salespeople was that we really needed to be tightly integrated with other solutions. And this was different than our other business lines, frankly. What we saw, and we did a lot of research up front where we just sat behind salespeople, watched them throughout their days do their work. And you ultimately saw the same behavior happen pretty regularly. A sales rep would be sitting at their desk, and many of you may have experienced this with your teams, and the reps would have dozens of tabs open, browser tabs, with all sorts of different applications. And they'd be bouncing back and forth between applications, copying and pasting and validating information. And it was a little bit shocking to see how quickly and how much this was happening. But the consistency was there was almost always 3 tabs open, amongst many others. CRM, and we've been getting questions for as long as I've been at LinkedIn about when we're going to go ahead and build a CRM system, since we have all the data to do so. And our answer is going to remain very much, we have no intention to build a CRM system. So that doesn't mean we don't appreciate the place of CRM. We want it to remain the source of truth, the record of truth. But in order to be an efficient tool for sales reps, we need to deeply integrate with CRM. So we are fully synced with both Salesforce and Microsoft Dynamics. We also have some other CRM sync options available for other tools. So there's our CRM tab. There's generally some version of LinkedIn. That could be free LinkedIn or paid LinkedIn. And then there's, of course, communication tools. So all of us probably can relate to spending more time than we wish in email and calendars and communication applications like Slack and Teams. And so in order to really build and deliver the most efficient solution, we have decided not to try to replace or displace other solutions, but instead deeply integrate across this, which we're really considering the modern selling technology stack. And I'll talk a little bit more about new solutions coming down the path as well. So as we think about investing our engineering resources and how to better add value for our customers like you in the audience and our users, we really think of 3 distinct categories. We believe we can help our users acquire new business, expand existing customer relationships, and maximize sales productivity. And Liam touched on some of these points, but just to reiterate, why do we think it's important and why do we think we are uniquely equipped to help people acquire new business? I think we can all agree that it's harder than ever to reach prospective customers. I remember the days when I had a desk phone. It would ring and a number would appear, and I didn't think twice about whether I recognized the number or not. I would answer that phone. I haven't had a desk phone for years. Now on my cell phone, if it's a number I don't recognize, there's no chance I'm answering because I'm assuming it's a solicitor, so things have just changed. Second, even once you land the customer, you win the deal, the journey is really just starting. You then have to retain that customer, which has become harder than ever, and hopefully grow, cross-sell, upsell. Because of the unique power of LinkedIn data across 660 million professionals, 7 million companies, and literally trillions of data points about connections, networks, and what's happening on the platform, we think we have a unique ability to give you the insights to make you more effective at keeping your customers happy and growing those customer base over time. And lastly, sales productivity is at an all-time low, and we at LinkedIn appreciate this based on our own data for our own sales reps. So we have more than 6,000 sales reps. We did a work over the summer to analyze the percentage of time that they're spending actually selling. This is an industry-wide statistic. Ours was actually lower. It was roughly 1/3 of our sales reps' time is spent selling. More time than ever is spent on admin tasks and what we consider non-value add activities. So it's very top of mind for us at LinkedIn to how to think about ways to maximize our own reps' productivity, and for us in Sales Navigator, how can we help all of our customers do the same? So now we're going to dig into each one of these categories, talk a little bit about features in Sales Navigator today, and also preview some things coming over the next 6 to 9 months. So let's start first with how we believe we help customers acquire new business. So again, with the power of the LinkedIn data, millions upon tens millions, trillions of data points at times, search has always been very much the backbone and the core value of Sales Navigator. We believe we're the most powerful people and company search tool on the planet, and we can help you and your teams in very sophisticated ways narrow down and find prospective accounts and leads when it matters. So we will never stop focusing on search. We're not done yet. Our goal is to make it faster, easier, more efficient for your teams to search and find the people that they're looking for. Liam already talked about Team Link, but it's ultimately the magic that you can leverage the collective power of your company's network to open doors, because that desk phone may not exist, people may not be picking it up, but if someone opens that door for you, you can step through it to create that relationship. Now, things that are coming soon. So first, we'll talk about something we're going to call smart links. So you may be familiar with the tool we call Point Drive today. Point Drive is going to be going through a bit of an evolution. We're going to bring closer into the Sales Navigator product and make it better and faster and easier for users to use than ever. If you're not familiar with Point Drive, then we'll walk you through just a really quick use case. So imagine you're a sales rep. You've gotten that door open. You've scheduled your first demo with a customer. You complete the demo and you think it went really well. You immediately follow up, as all good reps would, with a package of materials. And then you wait. Now, because you used Point Drive, what's now evolving to Team Links, you should be receiving a real-time notification anytime anyone's engaging with those attachments. But you don't receive the notification, you don't receive the notification. So a really strong indication that maybe that demo didn't go as well as you thought it went, or you need to follow up again. Maybe it was just a timing issue. So really that power of insights into who's engaging with your content over time. The other feature that I'd like to highlight, also coming in the first half of next year, is something we're calling buyer intent. And this is something we think we at LinkedIn can do very uniquely. So you may be aware that last year, or earlier this year, we launched a feature where your sales reps get real-time alerts anytime a prospective lead or account engages with content that's been posted on LinkedIn through your company pages or sponsored updates. We're now going to expand that use case even further and provide alerts when your prospective accounts or leads are on your company pages, or even if they're visiting your website if you're using the LinkedIn Insights Pixel. So again, imagine that use case. I've had the demo, it went well. This time I package up the materials, send over, and see immediately that my prospect is going through those materials. But to even further and indicate and signal interest, I now see they're on the pricing page on my website. So really being able to connect the dots, understand the buyers who are in it, and be able to focus and spend your time where you have the largest opportunity to sell. So stay tuned for more to come on buyers' signals later this year, later next year. We're on the fiscal year. We went from a calendar year to a fiscal year. It's actually, we just go back and forth between the two. So now walking through how we can help you better expand customer relationships. So really what we focus on here is providing real-time alerts and signals when something changes at an account. So you've won the account, you've won the deal. Now first you need to keep it. You need to make sure there's limited churn risk, and then again, hopefully growing and expanding that deal over time. So anytime we see a signal that something has changed in the account, we're gonna alert that relationship manager or that rep real time. Maybe there's a new senior hire. Anytime there's a new senior hire in an organization, it represents both opportunity and risk. We understand when companies are growing or when they're shrinking over time, because we see job postings and hires happening at the department level where you can really narrow in and focus when there's an opportunity to reach out, potentially sell more, or understand risk of any kind of downsizing. One of the pieces that's coming soon, just here in the next few weeks, so you won't have to wait long for this one, is around our shared list. So for those of you that are not familiar, we launched a capability about a year ago where anytime you're saving leads or accounts in Sales Navigator, you can create unlimited numbers of lists to help you prioritize and keep on top of your accounts and leads. We then opened up the ability to share those lists across teams. So what you'll see with shared lists now is the ability to see the last activity, the last time anyone at your company reached out to an account or a lead. So to the extent you're having multiple people that might be calling into an account, lets you better, again, understand and prioritize what was the last activity or outreach, and what does that mean for my next step. So much more to come there as well. And then the couple things I'll highlight here, these are both things coming, again, just in the next few weeks, so you won't have to wait long for these ones. It's part of our quarterly release this quarter. One is what we're calling, what we call search spotlights. And if you're not familiar with these, It's a really powerful way to take those search results and narrow in on the ones that mean the most to you. So now anytime any of our users are running an account search, they'll be able to narrow down to any company who's had a financial event, meaning they've raised money, they've invested money, they've had some kind of major financial event in the last 6 months. So again, signaling that opportunity for outreach, the growth that is likely to come when funds are raised. So more signals, more focus for reps to spend their time more efficiently. And lastly, how do we think we can help our customers and our users maximize sales productivity? The first two have already been mentioned, but just to touch quickly, the first being the Sales Navigator application platform, what Liam talked about, the power of really connecting together your solutions beyond CRM and email and calendar to make your reps more efficient. The second is CRM sync. So if you use Salesforce.com or Microsoft Dynamics, by syncing together Sales Navigator with your CRM, you will help your users be more efficient and productive. You will also get better insights on real return on investment as you can now see how Sales Navigator is helping you close deals. So two very important steps as you're thinking about evolving your Sales Navigator program. Two things that are coming soon that are going to make the CRM sync functionality even more powerful. The first is coming in February, and it's what we're calling Contact Right Back. So imagine a world when you're a rep, you do a search in Sales Navigator for leads across your accounts. With one click, you can narrow down to only the leads not already in CRM. So only the leads that you don't know about at this point in time. Then with another click, you can write those contact records back to your CRM. So we, of course, can't provide PII like email address and phone number, but you'll have things like name and geography and job title and company. So you'll be able to create contact records in CRM that are unknown based on LinkedIn data without leaving Sales Navigator. So a huge step there. Another one we're really excited about, which is launching just over the next few weeks, is called data validation. This will be available exclusively to our enterprise SKU customers. And this is all about how we can think about taking steps in helping customers deal with CRM cleanliness. So the stats on CRM cleanliness are pretty staggering. We estimate that well over half of all CRM records are out of date. We also know, as Liam mentioned, that decision makers, particularly C-suite, turn over at a really rapid rate. So even if at a point in time your CRM is up to date, it is almost immediately out of date as people change roles either within the company or to a different organization. So what we are launching is what looks really simple. It's a flag in CRM that says no longer at company. So for all of the records, the contact records associated to you, your users in Sales Navigator, we will on a daily basis compare CRM records to LinkedIn data, and we will indicate when we believe that the contact record is out of date. Now, why is this important? It's important for a whole bunch of reasons. We've been piloting this for quite some time, starting to get some really interesting use cases from our customers as they're finding value here. The first is all around pipeline quality. Again, imagine a world where you're sitting down with your reps and you have several late-stage deals that all contacts on those deals are indicated as no longer a company. That represents massive risk to the pipeline quality. Secondly, a lot of times marketing campaigns are targeted directly from CRM records. So your dollars are being spent based on the people you think are at companies that have open opportunities. If 60% of those are out of date, that means 60% of that spend may be wasted. So you will now be able to redirect those dollars towards the companies and the people that we believe are up to date and accurate. So much more come on data validation. If this sounds interesting to you and you are CRM synced at this point in time, your relationship manager, your contacts at LinkedIn can help describe more. So hopefully that was a good overview of how we're thinking about helping our customers and users acquire new business, expand customer relationships, and maximize sales productivity. But I did fly all the way from San Francisco, so I would be remiss to not share one more big announcement with you all. Now keep in mind, this won't be announced in the US until late April, so you are getting a very, very early preview of something that is in the works that we're just going to start piloting early next year. So I'm going to give you a high-level overview. Even some of the LinkedIn employees don't know very much about this yet, so you may not be able to get more information for quite some time, but I think you'll be excited. So again, imagine a world in which you and your sales operations partners are using a brand new product called LinkedIn Sales Insights that ultimately helps you identify and prioritize the accounts you have the greatest opportunity to sell to. And I do see cameras up. Please feel free to have pictures, but do not post anywhere, as this is not public news yet. So keep them for your own records. So LinkedIn Sales Insights is all about leveraging the power of the collective LinkedIn network, everything we know about the 7 million companies on LinkedIn, your individual companies and employees and how they're connected to those companies. We believe we can help you prioritize the accounts where you have the biggest opportunity to sell to next year. Not just that, but you'll ultimately be able to take these lists of prioritized accounts across your whole sales team, across geos and regions and industries, and push lists of those accounts directly into Sales Navigator for each one of your users. So now I'm a user, I log into Sales Navigator, and I automatically see a list of my top accounts. Not just that, but those accounts are saved, so I immediately begin getting insights on what's happening within those accounts, and even more, we can intelligently recommend to your reps the leads they should know at each one of those accounts. So a huge step forward again from an efficiency and productivity standpoint. We can really begin using the intelligence available in LinkedIn to help you plan, forecast, and execute your business next year. So please no posting on social media about this just yet, but we will have much more information for you in the late April timeframe. It'll be available sometime in the late summer. So thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to bring Rebecca back up on the stage.
So thank you, Lindsay, for some exciting news on LinkedIn Sales Insights and Sales Navigator. So now we're going to go a little bit deeper, and we're going to look at what this means for you and your sales teams. So I'd now like to welcome LinkedIn's Director for Sales Solutions EMEA, Sinead McCabe, to the stage and the panel.
Thank you so much, Becky. It's great to be here, and it's great to have the opportunity to explore the new era of sales with 3 panelists who have first-hand experience of what that means. A new era of sales really requires strong leadership to help sales teams adjust, and in their different ways, each of our panelists are doing that on a day-to-day basis. So let me introduce you to the panel. First of all, we have Deborah Threadgold. She is the Chief Digital Officer and leader of the Digital Business Group for IBM UK and Ireland. And this gives her a great perspective on how technology is reshaping selling. Welcome, Deborah. Secondly, as the Digital Transformation Director for Sopra Steria, Dan Broomham has a brief to reinvent how his sales teams engage with their clients. And he has a wealth of experience from Cisco and IBM to inform that. Finally, as the leader of sales training initiatives for Riverbed Technologies, Florian Gottschall has a brief to enable his salespeople to thrive at this new era of sales. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to the stage. So my first question is kind of a fun get-to-know-you question, which is a bit of a tradition on LinkedIn. As modern sellers, you all have excellent LinkedIn profiles, but could you tell us something that's not on your LinkedIn profile? And we'll start with Deborah.
Great. So first of all, I'm Irish. What's very important to Irish people is the 17th of March, because it's St. Patrick's Day, so it's our patron saint. So a little bit of information about my family. On my dad's side, my grandmother was born on St. Patrick's Day and was called Patricia. Over 50 years ago, my father married my mother, who was born on St. Patrick's Day and is called Patricia. I'm one of three, but my younger brother has 3 children, and the youngest child was born on St. Patrick's Day. So I'm not quite sure what was happening 9 months before St. Patrick's Day, but I didn't get the memo.
Thank you, Deborah. Dan?
So you may tell from my accent, I'm not Irish. The one thing I have done, I've actually won a singing competition. Unlike the UK and Eurovision, I've actually won a singing competition in Germany, in German, believe it or not. I think they took pity on me, and it was really karaoke. And I think I sounded a bit like the LOLO policeman from LOLO, if you do remember that. So yeah, I think they took pity on me, but nevertheless, it's still a claim to fame, and I'm quite proud of it.
Well done. Florian?
So my profile shows that I'm from Germany, but this is not exactly right, because I'm coming from Bavaria, that's next to Germany,
Okay.
we say. But the dream of me and my brother always was that we produce a cinema movie together, and we'll watch this movie with our name at the end of the movie coming in cinemas officially. And now my brother made it. They produced a cinema movie, a drama. This will be screened for the very first time in New York on the 14th of February. And we were quite happy to go there and see finally our name appearing at the end of the movie.
And what's the name of the movie, in case we're all
The movie is called You Go to My Head. And whenever you connect or look at my profile the next days, I will post a trailer there so you can get some more insights about it.
We look forward to that. Okay, a question for all of you. We've heard from Liam about how how buyers' expectations are changing. How are you seeing that flowing through to your teams? What is the biggest change that you see that your buyers expect? And we'll start with Florian.
Yeah, I think the biggest change we had in the last 10 years is that really the sales cycle itself do not start anymore where it used to start. Like people calling the brand and asking, what solution do you provide? What do you offer? What do you have? The sales cycle now starts somewhere else in a group, on LinkedIn, in the internet, online, in the online world. And people are not looking for sales like we heard already today. They're looking for a buddy. They're looking for somebody they can trust. They're looking for a trusted advisor. But there are so many people in those groups, and people are struggling to find exactly the person they feel comfortable with. But at the end, every sales decision, whatever you buy, if you buy a television or if you go B2B sales, every sales decision at the end, in the very last second, is an emotional decision. And therefore, people need to find their buddy, a partner, not a solution provider, a partner who is heading along with their way, who knows what they want, what they're looking for. The problem is there are a lot of people, and the attention span is quite slow, quite small. And so we need to figure out a lot of new ways on how to approach people. I, for example, did a lot of practicing and a lot of pilots in the last months with video. Happy to share with you. This helps a lot to show complex information in short way. And I think this is finally what changed the last years.
Okay, Dan?
Yeah, I think I did have an answer for this, and I think I'm going to change it based on what I've heard. But I put it more in terms of I wear 2 hats. But as a supplier, I think I really echo the point around partnership and really what partnership means. There is suppliers that come to me and will talk to me about the features of their products. It's an old rule about sales. Don't sell features, sell the benefits. But it's never been more important, I think, now around the benefits of what it actually means to me and my business. And it's really genuinely that partnership, because a lot of the time and a lot of the new innovation that we're bringing into the organisation and then taking out to our customers as a partner is we've got to sell together. We're actually not just selling externally to my clients, but also internally to the rest of my business to convince them to make some of these really significant moves.
Okay, Deborah?
So I think I'm going to validate a lot of what Liam said, actually. So we definitely have customers that are a lot more savvy. They're doing lots of research. They have access to a lot of data. When they come and talk to the sellers, which is generally now more mid-funnel than previously, then they have great clarity about what they want. They're looking for a lot of transparency. And I agree with Liam. I think when they get in touch with our sellers, they are expecting them to be experts. They expect expertise in terms of industry. They expect them to show eminence. And as I said, lots of transparency around cost. I think what adds to the challenge for the sellers is this whole democratization of buyers. So again, we're seeing multiple layers of buyers and influencers in our customers. And that creates some real challenges for the buyers in terms of, our sellers, in terms of making those relationships. So they may be having a conversation with the developer, they may be having a conversation with the CMO, they may be having a conversation with the IT director. So they really have to have a much deeper eminence and expertise than ever before. And I guess what's interesting for me is that we can really get a sense of whether we're meeting our buyer expectations very quickly now. At IBM, we use Medallia's Net Promoter Score. So we are constantly reaching out with waves of surveys, whether it's on a sales relationship, where it's on an individual sales transaction, or across any of our digital touch points. And they'll tell us pretty quickly whether we've met their expectations or not. And I guess the onus is really now on the sellers and on us as an organization to make sure that we are responding in a very fast way when we don't meet those expectations. So for me, that's a real change and a real differentiator.
Okay. So Dan, your role is very much focused on using technology to transform the customer experience. Over the next 3 years, what do you see as the main opportunities and challenges with that?
Yeah, I think you touched on customer experience is key overall, absolutely. And I don't mean my customers, I'm talking about our customers' customers.
Yes.
What's their experience? Because they're ultimately what we're selling, and a lot of technology now is going to affect them. And it's got to be good, and it's got to be really end-to-end efficient. It's got to be they want to use it. So I think with that, I think the first point really is with technology is constant innovation. Mm-hmm. We've seen it actually with some of the innovation that's coming out. The days are gone where you're selling a product, it's there for 3 years, and you expect that to be good for that 3-year period or 5-year period. We've constantly got to innovate, constantly got to see how you integrate it into the business, and constantly got to be adding that value to your clients and reminding them of it is. We've all seen the scenarios where we brought technology in and not only using 20% of its functionality, and it could do so much more. That's all part now of the sales process and stuff to remind people. I think the next big thing is we've touched on it a lot, but fragmented decision making. Without a shadow of a doubt, the products that we're selling now, when you look at the big map of all the products that are available in the sales world, you are touching so many different parts of the business, CFOs, transformation directors, marketing directors, HR. It touches absolutely everybody. And you've got to realize that the decisions are really broad. Yeah, and you need to get a lot of people on board. And back to my previous point, potentially selling with your champion into that organization to convince them. And then I think the third thing, and still the most important, it is Sales 101, but it's the deep understanding of your customer. But I think more, it's your customer's customer. If it is so important to people now around the customer experience that I'm giving to my clients, if you can help me enhance that experience, that's my number one concern, and that is most people's concern as well. So it's really talking through that experience and bringing that knowledge, help me integrate it into my business, help my customers integrate it into their business, make it work, bring partners that can make these things work. But that's really the most important thing, is about how do you embed it and improve that customer experience.
Great. So, Deborah, we've talked today a lot about the importance of relationship building at scale. Again, how do you see that playing out over the next 3 years, and what are the challenges and opportunities with that?
So, we've already mentioned the fact that there are so many different influencers and buyers, so that in itself creates a challenge. But of course, the sellers are also dealing with various stages of the sales cycle. So on the one hand, they may very well be using some kind of broadcast media or webinars to reach out to and engage with new customers, but they're also having these very personalized interactions through chat threads or email. So it's very complicated for them to do that, and I think scaling is very difficult. I think the really important thing here is that our sellers have to be relevant. We know that just broadcasting lots and lots of content and data doesn't actually work. It's got to be very personalized. They've got to be listening to what the customers are saying. They've got to be responding with some real expertise. But I think what brings an opportunity in our industry, and I think in many industries, and it's also a challenge as well, is this whole emergence of ecosystems. So we are now seeing customers turn more to a whole set of players to create a solution to the challenges that they have. And this is driven because we're seeing so many more disruptors and competitors into all of our industries. So that traditional value chain is now becoming much more fluid, and we have to be able to respond to that. And I think the opportunity for us to respond is to build our partnerships. So, you know, we heard Lindsay talking about connections, so it is about creating those partner relationships and opening up our ecosystems that way. And we have applications where we connect partners who've got complementary offerings and complementary services. But looking at it from a customer perspective, we also have to be able to bring all of those different skills and all of those different requirements together in an orchestrated platform kind of approach. So customers need to be able to reach out and know that they can get what they need along the various stages of the journey. And that's where the whole concept of our marketplaces come in. So I think as we evolve our marketplace, where we bring all of these partners together and give access to our customers, and also the third-party marketplaces that we're participating in, they're going to be, I think, really, really critical, Sinead, in terms of how we move forward and scale.
Okay, thank you. So Florian, thinking about this from a skill set point of view, how is the selling skill set changing at the moment? And do sales professionals today need different qualities or skills?
I think the most important part is really that we need to teach the people again how to listen, to do active listening. Because most of the people are, like somebody said, listening with the intent to answer instead of the intent to understand. And I have a good friend of mine who was sales representative, was team leader, manager, director, vice president, by the way, even working here for LinkedIn a couple of times. And I met with him years ago for lunch, and he said, like, Florian, I set up more than 400 salespeople in my life. I employed them. I searched for them. I did the HR for them. And he said, like, there are two skills they need all the time, doesn't matter what technology is there. First is the skill, they need to be able to reach out to somebody by phone, face-to-face, on an event like this, whatever, and they should not have a problem with doing so. It should be easy for them. It should not be a hard work for them. And then there's the second skill, to close a deal. And he said to me, the last thing, closing the deal, I can teach to everybody. This is something everybody can learn. The very first part is the one that makes a good salesperson. And you have that or you don't have that. And if you don't have that, probably it's better to do a different job. This is not mean, it's the reality. But you are much more a salesperson if you have no problem to reaching out to anybody on phone, face-to-face, or wherever. And I think this is a quality, whatever technology, whatever time, this is something that's always there.
Okay. So I think earlier on Liam mentioned, and it was very interesting to see, that there seems to be a big gap between what our North American colleagues use as part of their budget for sales technology versus EMEA. So Dan, what impact do you think that this will have on the competitiveness for EMEA sales teams, and should we be worried?
Yeah, I guess one person's worry is another person's opportunity.
Yeah.
There we are. I'll leave it there. No, but I think there's probably three areas in terms of the opportunity. I think first and foremost, and I would put this first because we're at a LinkedIn event, but social media. So we all use social media, and we're probably all pretty much, I hope, on LinkedIn. That's why we're at this event. But it's an incredibly powerful tool initially to have conversations with people. I think we can do an awful lot more, and some of those tools that we've seen today, I think, immediately how you can start to integrate that into the business, I think that's really powerful. But first of all, it's that you use the tools that we've got today. Use that social media tool, find out who it is you're talking to, where they're from, on all of those simple things. It sounds really simple, but I meet a number of people, both sides, from a sales and partner side. And also I've made the mistake of not doing my research when we've got these valuable assets there. So I think it's a really important one, and then the tools that can enhance that. The data and the analytics of the data, yes, we're very used to using CRM tools, but the analytics of then that data and how we can really mine that oil, as we've seen, is really key. It can cut out so much time. It can really help you prioritize as an individual what you're doing, where you're going to get your leads, what are the leads that are most likely to result in business. But also at the business level, where do we prioritize? Where are we going to put our efforts, etc. It's incredibly important. And anything that surfaces that and makes it easier for people is an incredibly important thing to do. But I think, you notice there's a pattern, I try to answer everything in threes. So the third point, but again, the most important thing is efficiency of sales. By definition, we want salespeople selling. So anything that we can do to ensure that they are selling instead of doing admin, And I've come from both sides. So from a sales side, it's very common that we, as the person that's there in front of the customer, the expectation on that salesperson not only to talk to the customer, but then do all of the admin and everything else that is needed after that it has been traditionally very, very high. And technology can come in now and really help, really concentrate their selling. Let's use the integration. Let's make sure it's mobile. Let's make sure it's immediate. They can use their phones, etc., etc. We know there are tools there, but as we look forward, we need to make sure they're in harmony with each other, and that experience for a salesperson is as good as it can be so they can concentrate on selling.
Okay. So speaking about that technology, I think we've heard today that millennials and Gen Zers really expect the latest technology to help them be successful at their roles. Looking at that, it seems to me that if you underinvest in technology, that we might not attract the best talent. Deborah, how much of an appetite do you think sales teams themselves have for this new technology, and are enough businesses satisfying that appetite?
So I think absolutely there's an appetite, and I don't think it's just millennials and Gen Z.
Yes.
By the way, I think all of our sellers understand that if they don't move with the times and use the tools, they won't get access to the customers. But if I look at the millennials and Gen Z, and I think about, for example, we have a digital sales centre in Dublin, and we're constantly bringing in new people. I mean, for sure, they're born digitally native. They use social media and platforms, have done all their lives. But the observation I make is that that doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to make the most of them. So they're not necessarily optimizing the tools. And they don't necessarily come to our businesses either with that business acumen on how to build and maintain a relationship. So I'm going to come back to something that was mentioned, I think, by Florian earlier. It's all about how we are coaching and enabling and continuous learning for our sellers. So yes, we've deployed Sales Navigator licenses, hundreds of them across Europe. We make sure that all of our sellers are digitally certified through an external company. We use the social selling index. We're looking at our own performance as a company against similar companies, but we're also using it as a tool to keep on coaching the teams to make sure that they're really optimizing the tools in the appropriate way. And I think the other thing that's really exciting is that we're also using our own technology to enhance the tools. So we have a tool that we developed a couple of years ago called Cognitive Sales Advisor, and we're applying simply artificial intelligence to huge amounts of data. Liam mentioned the data that's structured and some of it's unstructured. But by applying these AI tools to the data, we can actually get deep analytical insights that enable our sellers to have that very personalized, very smart conversation with the customers. And so we'll continue to evolve those tools. They will get more personalized, they will get more smart. So I think tools have a huge part to play, and I think we'll see a lot more. But I agree, I think there is a lot more for us to do, for sure.
Okay, so my last question to Florian. What's your take on the attitude of sales professionals to technology, and what do you think their expectations are?
Last but not least, one last thought of mine about technologies. We have a lot of incredible technologies at the hand at the moment. They're enabling us to do a lot of things, CRMs, LinkedIn, and so on. But still, I have people coming up and saying, we need this technology, we need this CRM, and then everything we have to do is running nearly automatically. Emails are sent out and everything is cool, and you only have a new customer and fill your target with one click. I can tell you it's not working. You still need to handle all the tools. And there's still some effort calling somebody. You still need to meet people. You still need to meet to get the signature. Even if you're collecting the buyers online, there will be support. You will be in touch with the people who are using your service, your product, or whatever. And I think for that, we need to teach the people, and this is what we're doing, to handle all the technologies. But based on that, or on top of that, you need to know all the soft skills. You need to know how to handle it, how to use it, and you need to do still work. You need to do still calling people, reaching out, going out. And I think this is something everybody has to have in mind when doing sales today.
I'm afraid that's all that we've got time for. I'd like to thank the panelists for their fascinating insights. I think you've given us all some food for thought. So I'm going to hand back to Becky, who's going to give us a view of what's happening for the rest of the day. Thank you.
So thank you, Sinead. Deborah, Dan, and Florian for an incredibly insightful panel discussion. We have been racing through a lot of stuff this afternoon, so now is the time that we're going to break and give you all a chance to recharge your batteries, grab a coffee, and get ready for our next item on the agenda, where we will host a fireside chat with Sir Clive Woodward. Now, I'm just going to remind you of a few things. Please comment on how the day is going and also answer our question, which we posted earlier, which is, wait for it, what are the key characteristics winning sales teams need to succeed, using the hashtag LinkedIn Sales Tech. Now, coffee is going to be served in the saloon. It is a relatively short break. It's 15 minutes, so if I could ask everybody to get back on time, that would be fantastic. For those of you on the live stream, I am super sorry we can't get coffee to you, but we would ask if you just run away, put the kettle on, come back 15 minutes, and we will have a wonderful fireside. So that's it from me for now. If you'd like to exit, I'll see you in 15. Thank you.
Gentlemen, please welcome back your event MC, Rebecca Snaufer.
So welcome back, everybody. That was a quick coffee, wasn't it, right? But I hope you are all feeling suitably recharged and ready. Now, this is the thing that I have really been looking forward to. So I would like to welcome to the stage the Director of Sales Strategy and Operations for LinkedIn EMEA and LATAM, and Sir Clive Woodward.
Introduction, and it's great to be here. I'm delighted to be here with our guest today, who really needs no introduction, but we'll say some words about him anyway. He is one of the most influential and greatest figures in English and British sports history. He coached England to victory in the 2003 Rugby World Cup. He was Director of Sport for the British Olympic Association, helping Team GB to outstanding results in both the Beijing and London Olympic Games. As a speaker, he's influenced many around the world with his lessons around developing winning cultures and championship teams. He's recently back from a trip to Japan, where he was rooting for the England side at the Rugby World Cup. Welcome and thank you for being with us today, Sir Clive Woodward.
Thank you.
So, Sir Clive, today we've talked a lot about a new era of sales that's being driven by changes in technology, and I'm sure the audience have lots of questions for you on that subject, and we will have some audience Q&A later. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask you a few questions first, and in particular in the areas of transformation and teachability, which are critical in a time of change, as well as a winning mindset and dealing with stress, which is ever present in the world of sales. But before we get there, I wanted to open up with an icebreaker. It's something we did with our panel just before to get to know you a little bit better. I know you're very well known to the public, but there's always an opportunity to learn something new about people. And the question is, what's not on your LinkedIn profile?
First of all, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Steve and Becky, for inviting me to a conference. Second thing, it's Clive, not Sir Clive. Only my kids call me Sir Clive. But it's a great pleasure to be here. What's not on my LinkedIn profile, what I want to just stress, which is right down the bottom of my LinkedIn profile, is that when I left, I'm obviously best known for what I did with the England rugby team and the Olympic team, which I'm hugely proud of for both organisations. But prior to all that, when I left university, I worked for Xerox, ranked Xerox, so I worked for 8 years. That was my first job, selling photocopiers all those years ago. My patch was Derbyshire. I promise you there's more sheep in Derbyshire than people, so that was quite challenging. And then I went to Australia with Xerox, and I was the sales director based out of Sydney. I had 5 wonderful years working in Australia. And when we came back from Australia, I set up my own small leasing and finance company based on the skills I learned with Xerox Finance. I also ran for 9 years. Then lucky enough, my sport went professional, and I became the first full-time professional rugby coach. So the reason I just want to give that sort of background, that a lot of my learnings that I was able to apply to the rugby team and the Olympic team were based, was kind of predicated totally on my business background.
Great. It's a very unique perspective that very few people have, which is a great segue into our first question, which is, how many of the principles that go into building a winning sporting team also apply to the world of business? And are there any that don't?
Oh, listen, there's absolutely no difference. When I was given the job of the rugby team, the rugby team is no different than my small leasing company. You're quite simply, you're trying to produce results through people. It's the same in business and sports. So there's absolutely no difference. So what I learned to do through business, which I totally applied to the rugby team, I've kind of 4 areas which I really look at when I'm coaching people. And I use these today. I do a certain amount of work in sport, but I also coach and mentor quite a few high-profile business people. And I use 4 key criteria which go across sport and business. First, I just use talent. And what I mean by talent is, you can never spend enough time, effort, money, dollars trying to recruit the right people in your team. Same in sport and business. But to me, it's got to be seen as a starting position, not the finishing position. So many sport and businesses kind of think it's all about getting the right talent and sit back, it's all going to happen. That's a big mistake. So I think the most important thing, you start with talent. But once you've got this talent, it's how you leverage talent. And I have 3 things I totally focus on. And I do today, I run various businesses today. One is this concept I call being a student or being teachable. And quite simply, this is your ability to learn and take on knowledge. And when I'm interviewing anybody, including in sport, I'm really trying to find out, you know, are you what I call a sponge or a rock? I mean, have you got a sponge between your ears or a rock between your ears? Are you really capable of learning new skills, putting yourselves out there and developing yourself? You know, I'm a huge believer, if you're leading teams of people, it is your job to try and improve every single person. But it's got to be a two-way thing. You know, there's no excuse today for every individual not also taking huge responsibility for their own learnings and lessons. So that's the number one. On top of talent is teachable. The second thing I look to see which people in my team are good under pressure. I think pressure is a great word. It kind of sets people apart. People who can perform under pressure, you know, I think anyone can do any job, including sport, if there's no pressure. Pressure is something you can coach people. So I look for that. And then the last thing I look for people's attitude. You know, I have various ways of measuring attitude, including myself. And you're trying to find out, is this person somebody you really want part of your team? What is their attitude? So, you know, sport and business is the same. If I'm talking to a young athlete, a young rugby player, or a young Olympic athlete, I'm looking at those 4 key areas. If I'm talking to a chief executive of a major company, I'm still looking at those 4 key areas, which to me are all totally measurable, and there's no difference. You're just trying to make that person better. And, you know, when I'm leading teams of people, I'm very clear. My job, doesn't matter if it's a rugby team or a business team, is to make every individual better at what they're trying to do on a daily basis, and that's what I basically do.
Great. And like sales, sports is constantly evolving. We heard this earlier in the keynote that Liam gave this morning. There are always new techniques, new technologies, new analysis, new insights. And he also raised that age-old pub question of, could a great team of the past compete with a top team of today? What's your view on that and the impact of technology, and how important is technology in the process?
Well, technology is huge, but it's a difficult question because the past is the past. I mean, that was happening all those years ago. And, you know, if I go back to 2003 rugby team, for example, the way I did it with that team in terms of managing them, it was a team of people, rugby team, no different than a business team. What I used to try and paint the picture is that if your job was an Olympic job, would you have a gold medal on your neck? In other words, you're trying to be individually better than anybody else. So if you're working a team of people, a business like you're doing here, or a sports team like I run, I'm looking out at my team and saying, okay, how many people are just the best at what they actually do? And if they're not, it's my job and their job to try and become the gold medalist in whatever they're actually doing. And all I found is, you know, in a rugby situation, this happened in the World Cup in 2003, you're looking out at this team of people, and you've probably got at least 6 or 7 players with gold medals around their neck. Now, if you've got in your team 6, 7 people out of 15 who are generally the best in the world at what they do, the team stuff almost takes care of itself. I've seen a lot of sports teams and businesses almost spend too much time on the team stuff. I mean, I'll never ever underscore the importance of teamwork and working together. But I think if there is a secret to teamwork, you get every individual really working at optimal level. The team stuff takes care of itself, and you go to a whole new level. So when you're comparing that, I'm always looking you look at the team that played at the weekend, the current England rugby team. I'm still looking at the same thing. How many of those players would be the best in the world in their position? And that's how I compare. It's wrong to compare eras because life moves on. And certainly in the sporting world, technology is huge at that now. I mean, to be very clear, I've always prided myself on leading on technology and what we actually did with the actual team to take the team to a whole new level.
Right. So it almost sounds like technology in some ways can get in the way. And so what are are there fundamental principles that we need to just stay focused on and not be distracted by those shiny things? Do you think it gets in the way too often?
I don't think technology ever got in the way. The big thing for me is when you bring in, I think I was the first full-time professional rugby coach. So, you know, me and technology based on my business background and my Xerox background was very straightforward. The key thing on technology is making sure every single person in your team is really on board with this. I think as Deborah said when she was up here, do not assume just because you've got this great technology that everybody's good at it or really understands it. And, you know, listening there, and I was fascinated. I'm running a small company today. It's called Hive Learning. We've got 60 plus people. I mean, we use LinkedIn, but I don't think we've got a clue of the real power of it. You know, we got it because I think everyone else has got it. And in the rugby team, when I first took over all those years ago, Stephen, I got a phone call from this guy from a company called Prozone. Has anyone ever heard of Prozone in the room? A few nods. I got a phone call from Prozone when I've been in the job not very long, and this guy rang me, and he sent me an email, funny enough, which when I was one of the 3% who answered his email that I saw on the slide. But I answered the email because it said, we've just installed Prozone into Arsenal Football Club. Arsene Wenger, the then manager of the Arsenal Football Club, is the first Premiership manager to install this thing called Prozone, which is obviously a software product of some sort. I've never heard of it. And he said, you know, he's heard about you and like to meet you. We know you're pretty okay in the software and technology world. We want to take you down to see Arsene Wenger and show it to him. Now, I promise you, I hate Arsenal Football Club with a passion. I mean a passion. But just to try and prove that I was kind of a sponge, not a rock as I call it, I kind of went down to see this thing, and it was amazing. I mean, I spent the whole day with Arsene Wenger. He was just amazing when he showed me this thing. And what Prozone is basically this: you bolt these incredibly expensive cameras around the ceiling of your stadium. So around Highbury, as it was then, there's about 12 of these cameras. And what happens is these incredible cameras, when you run onto the field of play, these cameras pick up the individual features of every single one of the players. So if you can imagine a football pitch and just dots with numbers on the back, 1 to 11, you know, Arsenal playing against Liverpool, 2 different colours. The players run, they pick up your individual features, and as you are moving around the field, you pick up all this amazing movement. So imagine watching the green square here, and you're just seeing all this movement. It was fantastic. I was just completely draw-dropping stuff. So I couldn't wait to get back to Twickenham and persuade the board to buy this, which they did for me, and we became the second team to use this amazing product. So if you imagine what I've just described, but that was about 10% of the power of the bit of software. The key word, which I guess 1 or 2 people in this room has heard before, the key word of all this software was data, 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 data. We're now getting the most amazing data on every single player. Who's running furthest, who's running fastest, who's being lazy, who's cheating, and all that sort of stuff. You know, when I first showed this thing in the rugby team, I promise you there was total silence in the room. This was not a good bit of software if you were working for me, because no more bullshit, no more hiding. We knew exactly what they're doing. But the key point, if you take away one point about the thing about kind of technology and software, was because the players had the IT skills, because we really installed that into them, we started to use laptop computers, they used the software. There's no point in me having this with software, my coaching team, unless the players really knew what it was all about. So we went on huge training courses with the Prozone people. So the players started to use it. So after the game, they'd go away with their CD in those days and come back literally a day later or 2 days later and make short presentations about how they played. And it completely and utterly changed the dynamics of the team. But you would not be allowed to stay in the team, I promise you, no matter how talented you were. You know, I say talent alone is not enough. You couldn't stay in the team unless you were going to really engage yourself in this technology side of things. And of course, the players loved it because you teach them new skills. You know, I kept saying my job is to make you better at what you do. It's not only on the rugby pitch, but in the team room and making them better at technology. And it made a massive difference to what we actually did. And, you know, one of my other favourite sayings, Stephen, is there's no such thing as a dumb idea. And suddenly we start getting all these great ideas back from the team. And I almost pride myself now on kind of not being good at new ideas. What I pride myself on is giving the tools to my team, but then really listening. And if I hear one idea that makes total sense to me, that's going to, you know, make us score more tries, more gold medals, make the boat go faster, whatever, I'll get that done. And that's my strength, to getting things done once we know. But you've got to get every member of your team involved in this. And anyone who doesn't want to be involved in it, you'd question why they're in your team if you're really playing at the top table, which we obviously are.
Yeah, and so you started with talent. Talent is a prerequisite. Technology is going to happen. Things are going to change. And so how do you think about, and how do you go about building a culture that can adapt to these changes? Yeah, culture is a great word. Again, this is just, I don't know where I get these things, but this is the model I use. I've used this for a long time. I have this model, if you think about a winning culture, I think culture is absolutely huge, especially around diversity, inclusion, and all these areas. To create the winning culture, but it's easy to talk about it. I have a model, 3 key criteria: leadership, teamship, and partnership. I think leadership we all kind of get. I'll never, ever underscore the importance of leadership. I've never seen any successful team, sport or business go well unless you've got outstanding leadership. But Harvard Business School said last year alone there's 3,500 books written on leadership. So I think we get that. And your leaders are there to put in the standards and all this sort of stuff. Partnerships, I think we understand as well. Partnerships, obviously your external partners, but to me, your most important partners are your internal partners. You know, and I have this saying based on cricket, you know, how can we help you? You know, all my partners, I'm really keen to help them and open the batting.
And I found if you really help your partners, when you need help, they'll come back with it in bucket loads and bucket loads. But I think there's been a lot written about partnerships. But the third one is teamship, and this is a really fascinating one because, you know, all these books have been written on leadership. I've never seen anything written about this thing I call teamship. So what is teamship? And I think I learned this really from my small leasing company. When I say small, we ran it for 9 years. It started off with a couple of us. At our height, we had 10 people. So it was generally small. And teamship is basically this. And this was, you know, I know that it's a style of leadership. It's certainly my style of leadership. And teamship is this. If you've got your team, if you can just kind of role play me for a second, if you're leading that team and you want to discuss something, any subject, whether it's about the business or your behaviors, what I like to do is kind of set the scene, then leave the room. And I'd want my team to discuss this openly and honestly with each other. And then I'd want them to come back to me through one of the team members and explain what they've all agreed. So let me just give you a simple example. And the England team ended up with hundreds of these teamship rules. But one is, say, punctuality. So I think punctuality is huge. I think punctuality says more about a team of people or individuals than anything I can think of. It just works for me. I am never late. If you speak to anyone who's worked for me, they'll just say, whatever you do, don't be late. Because I'm never late. But time's starting on time, it's finishing on time, and all this sort of stuff. So, for example, with the England rugby team, I would set the scene. I don't want to, every time we meet, say, get back on time or whatever. I want it to become a complete part of our culture. So I would leave the room. I'd want them to discuss it. And quite simply, they discussed this, and they all got this. We're trying to be the best team in the world. We're trying to beat all these amazing teams we've never beaten before. But they came back with this concept that time was 10 minutes early. So in other words, if I called a meeting and started at 3 o'clock this afternoon, they'd all be in the room at 10 to 3. So you as the leader read this, and be very clear about its teamship. It can only become a teamship rule if you get 100% agreement from the team, 100%. It can't be 9 out of 10 because that 10th person might be right. If you get 10 out of 10, you then report to the leader. If you, the leader, agree, it becomes a teamship rule. That's it, it's done. You can still knock it back. Fundamentally, I don't believe in democracy in these situations. So if you don't like what they've come back with, knock it back. But that's how it actually works. So they came back to me with this. So I'm the leader of the team, 10 minutes early. Yes, we all named things. It was called Lombardi time, after a famous American football coach. And it was 10 minutes early. And I promise you, when we put this in, 7 years of coaching the team, no one was ever late, ever. Because it was showing respect and knew how this actually worked. They always knew I'd be on there. No one's ever late. If I'd gone to them, which is kind of old school leadership, and said, right, 10 minutes early, that's kind of what I always call conflict. I'm useless at being told what to do. If someone tells you what to do, I kind of woo. There's a famous thing, if you tell me what to do, I'm not going to understand. If you involve me, or you show me, I might get involved. If you involve me, I'll be a total team player. I see so many people don't kind of get this. So when we're talking about culture, I see in a lot of companies I work with, you see these amazing values, and I think values are great, but they're just words. What culture does and what teamship does, these are actions. These are actions that bring your values and your culture to life. And you don't kind of stop the business to do it, you just keep drip feeding them in. And, over the England rugby team over 7-8 years, we'd have had nearly 200 teamship rules. And it's amazing. When you've really cracked it is when your team comes to you and says, can we discuss this, can we discuss this? And you can get into some amazing areas. It always fascinates me with businesses today, people get so hung up on diversity and inclusion. Just get it out on the table and discuss it. Just get it out there, discuss it. Get agreement from the team, sign it off yes or no, that's it. And then what you've got then, you start to create this amazing kind of set of cultural values and what I call winning behaviours or teamship rules. And any new starter comes in, suddenly reads this and go, wow, this team really knows what they're actually doing. And the team that won in 2003, that is still the number one team I ever worked with, sport or business, at their culture. Because behind that team was an amazing set of winning behaviours, teamship rules, but it was put in by them, driven by me. The last thing, you can't just sit back and say, over to you, team. You leaders got to drive it if you understand it. But I promise you, I've never read any book, any leadership book about that thing called teamship.
Right. But it's interesting because you said you don't believe in democracy. So are they really your rules being
No, they're not my
down?
rules. I'm just saying I can still go yes or no.
Yeah.
But what happens very quickly is that they don't want to waste time. I'm saying don't waste my time because if you come up with something stupid, I'm just going to say no. So they soon learn to actually discuss it. Let's get this done. And if you start to do one a week, suddenly in a year's time you've got 52. And you start to cover stuff where some businesses just say to me, well, we've had real problems with this. So we'll sit everyone down and let them talk about it. But you get out of the room. You get out of the room, let them come back to you. You can obviously influence by saying, before I leave, this is what I'm looking to achieve out of this. But you want their agreement, and you make it very, very clear. Do not say, yes, I agree with this, unless you really, really agree with it. Don't get bullied, don't get pressurized by other people in the team. That's how it actually works. And to me, it's, you know, I couldn't run any team of people without using teamship rules and getting everyone's voice first before we put it into place. But once it's in place, it's in stone. You know, that's it, it's in place. You can change if you want to, but that's it. You never got to discuss it again. And we've got into some amazing areas, you know, around harassment, all sorts of areas, language, dress, all sorts of stuff that we got involved in that creates this culture. And that's what I think. You can have the best products in the world, best players in the world, but unless you've got the right winning culture, I think you're not potentially developing your team or products as well as you can.
Right, great. You talked earlier about looking for people who are teachable.
Teachable.
But can you teach teachability? Can you teach people to be able to learn and adapt to change?
Oh, for sure. You can teach anything. I'm a coach, so I'm totally biased. You can teach anything. Teachability. Have you heard the word teachability before?
I haven't, no.
Oh, good, because that's kind of my word. I think it's kind of... teachability in its purest form is, you know, you got talent. I want you to be teachable. Teachable to me is your ability to learn, it's your ability to take on knowledge, it's your passion for your subject. And the opposite is you're not teachable. And if you're not teachable, to me, you're uncoachable, a bit of a know-it-all, a bit of a pain in the backside. So I need every single person to remain teachable. And sometimes people can drift in and out of it, you're not always one thing, but I want everyone to be teachable. And all I do with teachable, I have this thing called 3D learning. And again, I promise you I haven't a clue where I got this, but I've had this forever in my mind. So once you've got your subject, whatever that subject is, and think of a subject within LinkedIn, whatever. Anyway, think of a subject. What 3D learning is basically this. The first D in 3D learning is what I call discover. So once you've got this subject, whatever it's called scrums, which is pretty typical because we got belted in the scrums at the weekend. Let's look at a subject called scrums in rugby. First thing we're going to do, either individual or collectively, is discover. So we're going to start to really discover what this thing's all about. So what I want to do is, to you individually or collectively in my team, get all this information out of your head, out of your computers, out of your files. I want to get it into one place, and we're going to really start to discover. And if you're teachable, you never stop discovering. You're always trying to find new thoughts and new ideas. So you discover. You really look at this. And yes, you can use your own team, but I also, the thing about discovering is speak to other people. What I used to love doing with the rugby team was basically invite people like you into my environment. So when I say people like you, these were people who are friends of mine, fans of rugby, but we had, a top headmistress for a private school, we had the boss of GSK, we had a couple of hedge fund managers, etc., etc. These are all kind of people I knew. But what I knew, they were all successful, whatever they actually did. But here's the deal. You can come into my environment, and imagine inviting someone into your environment, someone like me, say. I used to invite these people into my environment, into the rugby team, and we showed them everything. And the deal was this. You can come and spend 24 hours with me, 48 hours with me. We're going to show you everything, sit in the back of the room. Don't go gaga when Johnny Wilkinson walks in. Just keep out the way. But we're going to show you everything, which I think you'd like to do, because you come into a high-performing team, just like you are. But here's the deal. You can come and spend a day with me, 2 days with me, but by the time you leave, I want at least one thought or one idea of something we could do better. I promise you, over this 8 years of coaching England, I'd invited over 50-plus people to spend a day or 2 days with me. And I equally promise you, every single person left and gave me a bit of paper and said, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? It used to drive me nuts when some flipping hedge fund manager, who hadn't played rugby since his prep school under-8s, would come up with an idea we not thought about. And we're supposed to be this high-performing team full of all these amazing ideas. Then in true leadership style, you sit down with your team and you go, listen, I've had this great idea. So that's how it works. So when I say discover, do not underestimate where you can get new information from. So that's the first D. And you must never stop learning. That's what being teachable is all about. The second D in 3D learning is what I call distill. So if I'm, and I'd say modestly, if you don't mind me saying that, I'd be qualified to work with anyone I'm speaking to this afternoon. But that discover stuff, that's way out of my pay grade, my understanding, because it's very, very technical. But what I want you to do then is what I call distill. I have all this stuff here, all this kind of knowledge of discovery. What I want you to do is distill it into just key points. Out of all this stuff, what are the absolute key points we've got to actually learn? And that's when I come in, and I want this in simple, plain English, so I can understand it, but most importantly, your team can understand it. So then you distill it down into that, and it makes pertinent sense. And this is what I did in the rugby team, by the way. This is how I coach. This is my coaching. So we're using scrums, discover, what are our key points, etc., etc. Then the third D is what I call do. Quite simply, how do we now do this better? Meaning, how do we do the key points better than anybody else? So we found out what makes the boat go faster, what creates more KPIs, whatever you're actually trying to measure here. How do we do it better than anybody else? And that's where training practice comes in. And sometimes on the distill list, they'll have a lot of key points that maybe your competitors have already got. It doesn't make any difference. As long as we know that makes the boat go faster, that gets us more deals because we've discovered it and really studied it. The practice, I mean, we can maybe practice it better than anybody else. How can we be creative, how we train, how we practice to it, how we learn from it. So the practice is absolutely huge because that's the third D. And this is what I just call relentless learning, and that's what I pride myself on. Relentless learning has got to be a two-way thing, and you need people who are teachable. So teachable goes this way, but teachable for me goes this way as well. I want them out there studying, bringing forward ideas. And that 3D learning, I set up a whole business called Hive Learning around that. You know, we did it longhand with the rugby team. After my Olympic experience, I suddenly realized that what we did with the rugby team was totally unique. And then we set up a company to digitize it, so it's all on this wonderful little device here called Hive Learning. We now employ 66 people in Hammersmith doing this, which is a bit scary. As I sat in this, every time I say that, I sort of shiver. So we've got 66 people now just digitized, creating an app around relentless learning using the 3D process, which can go across sport, business, any subject, but you need people who are teachable, but you need people who have got a passion for what they're going to do, and they're going to go out and research it and all this stuff. And with the software now, with analytics, I think I can measure team effectiveness. I can measure which people in the team are really contributing and who's just messing around. You know, because everyone says when you meet teams of people, yeah, I'm a great team player. Well, I can measure it now. There's no hiding place from this. Because I want to see what are you putting in, what are you discovering, how are we trying to always do this stuff. And relentless learning must never stop. The moment this company stops learning, you're going to come second. The moment the rugby team stops learning, you're going to come second.
So it's interesting, ending on do, and the saying often goes, it's easier said than done. And so let's talk about the topic of pressure. How do you, sales especially is a role that has a lot of pressure, and we heard earlier that pressure is only increasing because the expectations of buyers are increasing. 77% of buyers don't trust that salespeople can help. How do you help your team deal with pressure and work under pressure?
Yeah, as I said, I think pressure is a great word. I kind of really like the word pressure. I think it sets people apart, and I think it's why we do it. You know, it's why you do sales jobs. I believe the people who thrive under pressure will do actually well. But a bit like attitude, I think you can coach pressure. And my favourite way of doing it, and you've just kind of role-played me for a second, I use the rugby analogy, which is the easiest one to use. But pressure to me, you know, pressure comes, and it's a very simple statement, pressure comes when you don't know what you're doing. And I'll repeat it. Pressure is when you don't know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, I think you can handle pressure very, very effectively. So if you use the rugby analogy, and it's quite topic with the last few weeks from Japan, what I used to do with the team and individuals, I probably had more meetings than everyone I know. I hear so much nonsense written about meetings. I think meetings are great. You know, meetings are this, you and me talking, Steve, like, this is a meeting. Meetings is also a bunch of people, you know. Meetings are absolutely fantastic, as long as they start on time, they finish on time, the right people in the room. They're not there for a chat and a cup of coffee. They're there to make, I keep saying it, to make the boat go faster. They're there to improve your business performance. But in any meeting, whether it's one-on-one or a team like this, I'd always have three things available, either on my desk here or big on the wall. I'd always have imagine a team, England team meeting room, you know, me holding a rugby meeting. I'd always have three things on the wall: a clock, a scoreboard, and a whiteboard. And in any meeting, I just stop the meeting and I'd just grab one of the players and imagine the scoreboard. Okay, scoreboard, and I'd write this on the big chalkboard. Scoreboard: England 12, Australia 16. Clock: there's 5 minutes to go. Then on the whiteboard, I set a situation up on the game. I just choose a player in the room. So let's role play. Matt Dawson. So bring out Dawson, better now known for Strictly Come Dancing and Question of Sport. But once upon a time, he was a pretty good rugby player. So I'd bring Dawson out and just literally stand in there and go, what would you do? So in other words, we're 4 points down, 5 minutes to go, there's a situation, what would you do? If he or she, if I'm coaching the ladies team, can't answer me like that, he's not someone who can perform under pressure. Because most pressure is a got time involved. And I call this teacup. And teacup is T-cup, and it's probably the word I use most outside of sponge and rock. And teacup stands for thinking correctly under pressure. So you're under pressure. We're in the World Cup final, we're 4 points down, there's 5 minutes to go. That's the issue. What would you do? If Dawson can't handle me like that, potentially he's not going to stay in the team. And the takeaway from all this pressure stuff, and this is backed up again by the most sophisticated data, if you come across a pressure situation that you've not experienced before, or equally important, you've not thought through, what would I do in that situation? The chances of thinking correctly under pressure, teacup, are really small. All these horrendous words kick in: choke, freeze, bottle, rabbits and headlines. That's what happens. Conversely, if you come across a pressure situation, it could be, in your world, a big pitch, you're trying to win, a big deal, whatever. Conversely, if you come across a pressure situation where something happens and you've not experienced it before, but if you have, so you've had experience before, but in this situation, you've thought through, what do we do in that situation? If it actually happens in the real world, there's a very high chance, backed up by the most sophisticated data, you'll make the right decision and get the job done. It's as simple as that. So this teacup stuff, those of you, how many people have got kids in the room? It's quite a lot of people. So I've got 3 kids now, hugely proud of all 3 of them, they're all pretty grown up now. If my 3 kids were sitting in the front row here, I promise you they'd fold their arms, cross their legs, and go, oh my God, here he goes again off his teacup stuff. Because quite simply, that's how we've educated. They're normal kids. They're out there. You know what I mean by out there. They're out there. You hope they're not going to come across any pressure situations. But if they do, you hope they know how to handle it, either through their parents, us, who've educated them, or their own peer group of how to actually handle this situation. And that's what we've always taught them. It's a learning tool. But if you come across something you've never experienced before, no matter who you are. So the secret is this is what I call working on the business as opposed to in the business. When I first started working with most high-performing people, which we've got here today, almost without exception, they're 100% in the business. They're driven by results, in. That's me. What I learned to do was still going to do that, but I'm going to do that 95% of my life. For that 5% of the time, I'm just going to sit back and try and find time to work on the business, which I call about pressure, trying to think about things could happen, what we can actually put in place. And if you keep just drip feeding these in, especially when they come from your team and your team say to you, we haven't thought about this, we haven't thought about that, then you know you've really cracked it. So pressure is something, Steve, I passionately believe you can coach people. But again, you've got to document it, you've got to keep it. You know, we use, again, the Hive learning software. But also, once you've experienced something, share it quickly with your whole organization. Because you're, whoa, we just experienced that. And what I found also, if you've not thought about something and something happens, if you're used to this way of thinking, there's a better chance you will make the right decision under pressure. So pressure is a great word, but teacup is teacup. And, you know, I see it all the time, especially in sport, which changes people's lives. Because in sport, you don't get a second chance.
Yeah.
In business also, by the way, sometimes you don't get a second chance. But most of the times, you can kind of screw up and there is a second go at this. But I just find it's just a case of working on the business as opposed to in the business and trying to, you know, kind of really think of what could happen, how we can work more effectively and all this sort of stuff. And that's how I kind of coach people.
Yeah, it's really interesting because when you normally hear about pressure, people think about think clearly under pressure. Take a deep breath, think clearly, but you're very intentional about that word, think correctly. Because
Massively.
It's about repetition, it's about practice.
You'd fall out with me if you say clearly. It's correctly. Anyone can think clearly. Can you make the correct decision in that instant? In that instant, because most pressure situations are like that. And when you think of it, you know, could someone walk in this room now with a gun or a knife? Yeah. What do we do? Choke, freeze, or do we actually think, okay, what would we do? And if you thought through what you do in advance, there's a high chance you may actually survive. And that's what it's all about. But it provides to sport, but it professionally provides to business. You know, when I do presentations on this, I've got hundreds of show you in sport where you just look at it, even if you don't understand the sport, you go, why on earth did they do that? And it's just because under pressure, they all completely folded. They couldn't handle it because they didn't know what to do. In business, there's thousands of opportunities that you can show people we blew it because we couldn't handle the pressure, or we won it, we won the big deal, or we had this awkward meeting we got through because we'd really thought through every single scenario of what could actually happen.
Great. How do you, on the topic of mindsets, how do you build winning mindsets?
A winning mindset, I mean, you interview for that, but you can build it. And all I do on that, I use this word attitude, which I mentioned at the start, because my 4 key pillars in any individual are talent, are being teachable, are pressure, and attitude. And what I do in attitude, I break down the word attitude into 10 areas. So I have 10 measures of attitude. I think attitude's a great word, by the way. I think attitude goes across most languages, most cultures. You know, he or she has got the right attitude. But I think a little bit like pressure, you can coach attitude. Yes, you're born, you're kind of brought up, and your attitude is kind of, your DNA is kind of created. But you can coach attitude. So I have 10 definitions of attitude, and they're simple words. Enjoyment's one, pressure is one, obsession is one. But behind those words, you know, really detailed explanation about what it is, what it actually represents, and how you can improve. And we've created quite sophisticated psychometric tests to measure all these 10 areas, but you don't need that. If you're working in small teams, as I say, a lot of my stuff came from working in my small leasing company. If you're working in small teams, you just need a bar diagram. Where am I 1 to 10 in this area? You know, and again, I'll come back to punctuality. I think punctuality is massive. You want to measure people's attitude. How can you trust somebody who can't even be on time for you? You know, we have all these sort of things. And then you can start to create, you know, real teamship rules under every single one of the attitude areas. But also the big thing for me on attitude, once you've got these 10 areas, and they just work for me, these 10 words, I want my team measuring me. On a monthly basis, I want everyone absolutely honestly, where am I on these 10 areas? Because you can drift into being this rock as well as the leader of the team. You just get a bit sloppy and a bit lazy. And if you're trying to be the best, which this company is all about, you want the leaders to be measured as well by the actual team. And they love that because, you know, they know it's a two-way thing. And I'm using these areas to actually improve people's attitude and make them more effective within the actual team.
Great. Let's end with a question around time. You've talked about Lombardi time, you talked about starting meetings early and finishing on time. And we heard time is a scarce commodity, especially in sales. Lindsay talked about salespeople only spending or being able to spend a third of their time on actually selling. Yeah. So it's more than just meetings. How do you coach your time, or how do you help coach your teams on managing their time more effectively?
Again, you know, I think time's a great thing. I must say, just to diverge slightly on that, I mean, I've loved sitting there listening to the speakers, to Liam and everybody else, because, you know, when I do, this is, you know, I probably spend 20% of my time doing this sort of presentation and talk. But when I'm lucky enough to come to companies like yourselves, you know, my business manager runs this. Always, if my diary's free, can he come and sit in the back and listen to everyone else? A bit like, you know, I sit there. And of course, these companies always go, why does he want to do that? And sometimes I'll sit for the whole day. If I'm presenting at 5 o'clock, if my day's free, I'll sit in the back of the room, cup of coffee, notepad. Because it's amazing what you actually learn. So that, in my world, is really good use of my time, because I'm learning all the time. What frustrates me when I look at my diary, or other people's diaries more importantly, is when you see blocks of stuff that actually, you know, is that improving you? Is that making the boat go faster than what we're actually doing? And again, this definitely, you know, I've had 2 business careers, really. One was a big multinational, Xerox, a bit like you, huge organization, lots of people. And the other one was my small leasing and finance company. When you run a small company, you really don't waste time, because if you're not successful, you go out of business, you lose your houses, your kids have all got to change schools, so it's serious. And we've been really good at every meet. Do I really need to be in this meeting? And if yes, I'm going to be there on time. Is it going to start on time, finish on time, et cetera, et cetera? This all comes under the teamship stuff. But again, when you're in big companies, you see it, and I go to some of these meetings now. It's just been a complete waste of my time, because I've not actually learned anything. So time goes across loads of different areas. And I don't know where I got this from. Maybe I came from a service family. My dad was a pilot in the Air Force, so maybe it's just from a service background. But I think team is fantastic. Time is fantastic, and I promise you, if you speak to anyone, any of the players, just go Lombardi time. I promise you, they go 10 minutes early. You spoke to Clive, but it just sits. It kind of works. But you know, I put a lot of responsibility on, you know, that 34%. I look at the salesman and go, okay, what else are you doing? Stop blaming the guy sitting up here. What do you do? What's happening 65% of your time? If you really want to be the best at what you're trying to do and be successful, you've got to find ways of getting that 30-odd% up to 50, 60%. So let's discuss it. Let's get it in. Let's get it around the table. What are we doing on this? But they're great figures. But I think everything is solvable. And I look at my diary, and I happily show anyone my diary now. And I think you'd go, whoa. And people say, wow, you put a lot into your diary. Well, I don't really. I'm never late. No one's ever late for me. If someone's late, we just lock the door. There's no point coming in. No, we did. We do. I hate, just say, well, forget it. You're not on time. And it kind of works. My favourite one on time was a dentist. I learned a lot of this. I worked in Australia for 5 years, and there was There's an amazing dentist I met who was hugely successful. And he wrote this thing, and I went to a sales course, and he wrote a book. His name is Dr. Paddy Lund. He wrote a book, it's called Building a Happiness-Centered Business. And he put a huge stall on happiness, not only for his clients, me, but for his staff. And he had this whole set of teamship rules that you had to sign up to before you become a patient of his. And one of them was time. And when you go to him, it's like if you go to your dentist, what really annoys people is people sitting around you late and all this sort of stuff. When you go to his dentist, one, you can't get in the front doors, it's locked. You've got to ring the doorbell. And because he said, well, I want them coming to see me, I want you to come and think of your, if you go to your very best friend, you just walk through the front door, you ring the doorbell, so we want to greet you and all this stuff. But the biggest thing is quite simply, if you're a second late, you don't get in. It still bills you, you get full charge. What happens? No one's ever late, because you can't get in. And it's just such a simple thing. And when you see it in action, you're never late, and you're screaming to get there on time and all this stuff. But it's all part of your contract. And he said, that's how I operate. But I'm still going to bill you for one. And if you don't want to be patient, you go and take your customer somewhere else. And he's the most successful dentist in Australia by a mile, because he understands teamship rules, happiness, enjoyment from his clients and his patients.
Great. Well, Clive, thank you for sharing your insights and your lessons. And I'm sure the audience will agree that these lessons are timeless. They're ones that will serve us for years to come. Now, just before we get to audience Q&A, we wanted to do one more fun thing, which is to get to know you a little bit better. We call it rapid fire questions. I'm going to give you 2 options. You've got 2 seconds to make your choice. Okay. I know you do well under pressure. Teacup, just remember.
This is the teacup moment here.
Are you ready to go?
Cut the cameras. It's the first teacup moment. I was only a joke.
All right, here we go. Playing or coaching?
Playing.
Rugby or the Olympics?
Rugby.
A good book or a good film?
Film.
Go for the posts or kick to the corner?
Posts.
VAR or referee's call?
Referee's call.
Beach holiday or ski holiday?
Ski holiday.
iPhone or Samsung?
iPhone.
Rice or noodles?
Rice.
Airbnb or hotel?
Hotel.
Beer or wine?
Beer.
X Factor or Great British Bake Off?
Oh, the Great British Bake Off by a mile.
Farmhouse or townhouse?
Farmhouse.
Martin Johnson or Owen Farrell?
Martin Johnson.
London or Tokyo?
London.
Buying or selling?
Buying.
Brexit or... Just kidding.
Just kidding.
Yeah. Thank you, Sir Clive. We're now going to turn it over to the audience for some Q&A. There are going to be some mics going along the aisles, so please do ask your questions. We've got one over here.
I always like it when the ladies first. Well done, you. Thank you.
So really interesting.
Yeah.
Just shout.
I am. Yeah, sorry, Sophie. Really interesting to hear about your approach to the teamship and getting people to come up with, if we do obviously 1 a week or 52 a year, what happens if they then don't stick to it themselves? So if they come up with the fact that they want to be 10 minutes early, and then actually next week or the week after, you're finding that a couple of them are 5 minutes early or 5 minutes late.
No, great question. Sophie, yeah?
Yeah, Sophie.
Sophie, thanks, Sophie. Great question. One, without sounding too stupid about this, it doesn't happen. Once they've agreed to this, it's like the peer group pressure. You've agreed as your team of people. I think you'll let your boss down if he tells you the stuff. You'll get kind of friction. If you've actually really agreed it, you've been part of it, it doesn't actually happen. And if it does happen, and I can't think of it ever happening, yeah, look, people can be late. You just there could be a traffic jam out here. This stuff can happen. If somebody is knowingly, purposely late, you've got a real problem. That's all I'd say to you. Once they've agreed this stuff, if somebody's going to start to actually undermine this, you've got a problem, which is, to me, great, because you've got to sort that person out very, very quickly. If you're trying to be a high-performing team and win World Cups and do what you're trying to do here, it's just a way of finding out. But once people have been totally involved, I mean, I'm a classic, I promise you. I do not like being told what to do, and I'm a bit like that. If I'm involved in that situation, I'll move. I actually pride myself on being a great team player. I pride myself on leading teams of people, but I'm also partying at Twickenham, for example. In this room, I'm the leader of the team, I'm the head coach. But in the room over here, I report to the chief executive. I've got the HR director, the sales director, the grounds director, and all this sort of stuff. I'm a team player. And I brought all this into Twickenham as well, where we're going to really understand how to work as a team. but I don't want to be told by the chief executive. I want to be involved in understanding it, and I want to really get my input into it. Once it's involved and I've said yes, I will not let anybody down. And that's the sort of person you actually want. So, of course it can happen, but I've not seen it if you really, really get to it. And I'm often asked in sport, you know, because you do have this, be very, very clear, I want to hire the most talented person. I don't care if they've got a history of being an awkward, a maverick, or all these crazy things you hear about people. I want the most talented person, then I'm going to manage them within this system. You know, the team that won the World Cup in 2003, this wasn't a bunch of angels. These were really kind of, you know, some challenging characters, but I never had a problem with them because I totally involved them. And they understood, I'm trying to make you a better player. And if you're a better player, we're trying to win the World Cup. And if we win the World Cup, you'll never forget this team or what we've actually done here. But I need your input. And if you're going to do this, don't go yes if you don't really mean yes, or we are going to seriously fall out. Never actually happened, as long as you explain it. And I think the last thing I'd say, Sophie, on this stuff, you've got to sit down one-on-one before you do this and explain to every player or your team why you're doing it. And you're doing it to bring these values to life, to create real actions that you see on a daily basis. This isn't fluffy, you know, words that you see on your websites and in reception. These are actions that we do as a team of people that you've all agreed. That's how you operate. So I've never had a problem, but it could happen. But to me, if it's good, if I found something that's good, because we're not going to win if we've got someone on the team who's trying to cut our legs away by not. Good question. Thanks, Sophie.
I think we had a question over here, and then we'll come up front.
Hi, my name's Colin. I was also very interested in your comments about teamship. I'm wondering whether you've had experience advising organisations about how to implement it in practice, where there's an element of hierarchy in the organisation. I can sort of picture the rugby team in the dressing room where I don't know whether it is like it in practice, but it seems like they might all be equals and having a conversation together as that team to come up with the rules. But in a sort of corporate environment where you know you might have certain layers or levels, do you envisage companies implement it in that you get everyone from every sort of level in the organisation to try and agree, or is it done amongst equals, as it were?
Sure. I mean, the answer is it should be no difference at all. You know, if the team of people, and you got someone up here, if you've got, you know, take my small leasing company. This wasn't equal. I was the boss. You know, different people doing different jobs, from the secretary to the chief executive to the, all different things. But that was just 10 people. But we had strict teamship rules, not strict, teamship rules we all put in place that was led by me. So totally variety of people. I'll tell you this, and interesting, I'll just get through this quickly, but on conversely, with my Olympic hat on, I was invited in by Olympic top sponsor, and I won't name the company, but you've got to be a big company to be a top sponsor of Team GB. So the boss called me in one day. He called me up and said, look, and I was the director of sport, and they were a sponsor of the team. And he basically said, will you come and make a short presentation to our board about what you're doing with the team, with your brand, for the Olympic Games? Great. So it wasn't this sort of thing. This was me doing my job properly. So cut long story short, I go to this board meeting in London. There's about 12 people sitting around the table. I had about a 20-minute presentation, a few slides. So I start speaking away. And I'm going through stuff. There's a guy sitting down there, I can see it now, a guy sitting down there just tapping away on his phone, just like this. Boom, 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 boom. So I looked at him and I thought, what should I do? Actually, I didn't even think that I knew exactly what I was going to do. Teacup moment. So he's tapping away, and so I gave him about 30 seconds grace, so he kept going. Literally, I then got this thing, and my clicker, he's dropped it from a foot, went boom on the table. He kind of looked up. Everyone looked up, and I said, look, I'm really sorry. I can't continue with you tapping away on that thing. I mean, to say there was silence in the room would be the understatement. There was complete silence in the room. The chief executive invited me in. He's gone brighter pink. You know, so he said to me, look, Clive, would you mind just leaving the room for a second? So I'm chucked out the room, so I didn't know if it's for a second or forever. But I'm like chucked out the room. So I'm outside thinking maybe I shouldn't have done that, but I'm going, no, you should have done that. Because I was their guest. I was invited to the board meeting. This guy's prattling around his phone. So eventually, it seemed like forever. I go back into the meeting, and this guy said, I can really apologise. Everyone's phones are off. So I just said, look, I just want to be clear. I wasn't trying to be a smart ass here or anything. You know, how many, this is the board, this is the top board, all equals. How many think it's the right behaviour to be tapping away on your phone when you've got a guest presenting? Oh, no, nobody. So I said, why'd you do it? So I then explained teamship. And I said, look, if, for example, we'd start the meeting and you'd said to me, Clive, thanks for coming. John down here has got to be on his phone, so we've got a big deal coming in from New York or Mumbai or something. That would be totally fine, because you've set the level. So this kind of, you've got to be really practical about this. But if you all think it's right to actually do this, that's what actually happens. And then I went back about 4 months later after Olympic Games to do a debrief. And you know, you kind of walk in, there's a lot of smugness going on. I thought something was up. I could just smell it in the air. I've been to lots of meetings. So I walk in, and this is brilliant. I'll never forget this. I walk in, and I've invited him. In the middle of the boardroom table, there's a telephone box, a big telephone about a foot high, about square. And I looked at this thing. I sat down. The chief executive walked in. Thanks for coming, Clive. And he walked over, lifted the lid off this thing, so it's the lid on, put his phone in. Every member of the board put their phone in the telephone box, put it down, said, you've got full attention, away you go. Absolutely brilliant. So this teamship stuff, you can activate it, make it fun, make it enjoyment, but people don't forget it because it's actions, not words. So to answer your questions, it doesn't matter who the group is, as long as if that's the group, that's the group. And it can be all level, like a board level, or it can be all over the place. But if you need teamship ways of operating, get everyone to contribute. But if that's the team, if you've got the youngest 18-year-old who's been there a day, he or she has to have an equal saying as the chief executive who's been there a year, or been there forever, sorry. And that's the point I'm saying. It kind of works. And it works for me anyway. That's how I think you create a culture.
I think we've got time for one last question. Florian, up here. Maybe two more, but we'll see how this goes.
So you mentioned leadership, teamship, and partnership.
Yep.
And I would like to know a little bit more about the partnership. What is important about partnership?
Yeah, partnership. I only didn't talk about it because just for time. Partnerships are a bit like leadership. You know, they're all equal, these things. I just don't see anyone really understanding teamship where they understand partnerships. Partnerships are, there's two partners. One's your external partners, and the second's your internal partners. And what we work a lot on is how can I help you? In cricket terms, which I know they're not great in Germany, cricket, but cricket means opening the batting, you know what I mean? So we always try and get on the front foot. How can we help you? How can we help you? And we try and teach the whole team. How can we help our partners? How can we really help? Any opportunity of what we can actually do. So it's just a case of understanding how can we help you. But it's such a simple thing to do, but we really look at it and constantly, so especially our internal partners. And we, again, if you use the rugby team, we did loads with the grounds people, the ticket people that no one's ever thought about before. When you thought, well, how can we really help you do your job properly? Then when you need it back, or favours back in return, you get it back in bucket loads and bucket loads. So it's partners, but it's understanding every company, and rugby's no different. Before I think I turned up, everyone's just working in silos. You know, you've got 8 different directors. There's our 8 areas. There's no crossover. And we're going, whoa, we'll all do our jobs better, including in the rugby team, if everyone's working together, and we're going to lead on this, the players going to lead on this, and let's everyone try and say, how can we help you?
So it's not only partnership between the team, it's also externally with people not in the team.
Totally. It's the external departments in this, or it's your external companies. It's actually nothing to do with the team. The team is all about teamship.
All right, we'll take one final question. Deborah, do you mind if we go to the back, and then we'll get you afterwards, one-on-one.
Hi, Clive. Lovely to see you and to hear you talk again. I've heard you a number of times, so always interesting. I'm ex-Telefonica.
I hope the content was a bit better than last time. So.
No, very, very informative. So my question might be slightly controversial. So given the recent win with South Africa, amazing win, in terms of your principles, the learnability, the sponge or the rock, and coping under pressure, you could almost see England giving up slightly when they were being thrashed by South Africa. What's your insight as to why they did lose? Because Eddie, obviously the coach, was very confident in the build-up to the game. So what is your insight? Why did they lose when they were supposed to be, one of the most fantastic teams around?
So what was your name, sorry?
It's Neelam. Neelam.
Neelam. The good thing about that, that was the teacup, because I have thought someone's going to ask me that question, so I've got to be absolutely... What happens in rugby is, I talk about 3D learning. But what I did, I broke the game of rugby down to 7 areas. And if I work with you, we would do the same thing. It's almost like you're going to write a book about what you do. So in rugby, we had 7 areas, and there was nothing we didn't do in rugby. We wouldn't be one of these areas, and we're good on data and all this sort of stuff. The number one area is this thing called basics and this thing called Scrum. And it's the number one thing, and all became really clear. if you're playing at the top level, World Cup finals, boom, 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 your scrum has got to be at least as good as their scrum. If it's not, you're going to lose the game. So what happened at the weekend, I was obviously there. England were red-hot favourites to win that game. The first 2 scrums, we get smashed. We're all going, we can't win this game. The scrum has been annihilated. And this is a thing called basics. And if you use the word basic, I think basics is a great word. It's the absolute things you have to get right. And it'd be interesting talking to all your LinkedIn staff here, or colleagues here, sorry. If I said, what was the number one thing you've got to get right? It'd be interesting to see if we all got the same answer. In the England rugby team, if we said to the whole team in 2003, what's the number one thing we've got to get right? Everyone goes scrum. Scrum, scrum, scrum. If that goes wrong, it doesn't matter how good everything else is, the whole thing collapses. And all that happened at the weekend was that actually happened. And the scrum got bashed and belted, and I can use stronger words. And we got belted in the scrum time, that was it. And rugby is a very simple game, really. If you get that part of the game wrong, at that level, you've got no chance. And then you've got to really go to the next level. Okay, what happened? Why did that happen? Which I'm not going to talk too much about. But that's what happened. And it's a great thing to think about basics. What are the one thing, and this is back to Discover. If we have Discover, what is the one thing that you think as an organisation you've got to get right? Everyone understands. We're going to see if we've all got the same answer in terms of how we actually work. But that's what happened. They got bashed in the scrum. And I was commentating on it, and I was pleased at half time because the guy, Mark Pugac, said to me, what would you do? I said, well, the half time would change completely. Just get everyone out of the way, all on wants the forwards. Unless we sort this out, we're going home, or we have no chance. And they didn't sort it out. They couldn't get it right. And we we got smashed 32, whatever it was, which is terrible to be there and see. But also, the days goes past now, I think, what did happen? How come our scrum got absolutely obliterated in the biggest game of these guys' lives?
All right, I'm going to go back on what I said. I'm going to go with one last question. I know we're going over time, but this is about learning. And so, Deborah, one last question, and then we'll break.
My question is about learning. So 3D learning. What did you write in your notebook today?
Oh, have you seen my books? If you saw my book, I've got everyone's name and contacts. What I did write, can I get a copy of the slides? Because there's so much information on there. But I just wrote everything down, and I wrote as much down as I possibly could. And when I sit down tonight in the car on the way home, I'll go through it and say, what can I really learn, Discover-wise, goes in here. And there's no doubt, I promise you, I'm going back to Hive Learning, to Chief Executive Angus, and just say, what are we, because I know we're using LinkedIn, I want to really know, and there's a bit of a sales tip here, if someone wants to give me a call, I'd like someone from LinkedIn, there's a bit of a sales pitch here, if you want someone to come and see us, I'd like someone from LinkedIn to come and take our Chief Executive and the sales team through exactly what you've got here, because and you said it, exactly what I just nodded when you said that. Don't assume because you've got the software. Everyone uses it. I mean, Prozone's a classic. Arsene Wenger gets it. I get it. Suddenly the whole Premiership got it. Most of the second division got it. Great for Prozone. But I went to Southampton Football Club, and I promise you, just sitting there. No one used it. No one used it. Certainly the players, it's a complete anathema to have a footballer using a bit of software. That what will not we do. But even the coaches didn't do it, because you've got to have the IT skills to actually use it. So just because people buy all this stuff and buy all your products, these amazing things I've been listening to, doesn't mean everyone's actually using it. And I would say categorically, just listening to the, what I'm going to go back to Hive Learning and say, if our 66 people, every single one of them should be trained on this, because they'll have using a different experience of how to get the whole thing through. We've gone way over time.
We have.
Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sir Clive Woodward.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, Stephen and Clive, for a fascinating discussion. And thank you to all of our speakers and guests for today. I mean, we have gone through an awful lot. We've learnt how sales technologies are not just about automation, efficiency, and time saving. I took down a load of notes as Clive was speaking. I love the concept of teachability, 3D learning, teacup, teamship rules. I think there's something there that everyone is going to take away and see how they can deploy through their teams. This is actually the end of the speaker sessions, but it's not the end of the overall event. We're now moving into our networking session, which will be held on the terrace. all of our speakers, our panelists, and I think maybe, Clive, are going to stay for some conversations. So lots of things that we can kind of pack up and take with us and have conversations on shortly. I do want to say that we have our customer testimonial crew outside. If you just follow the signs, if you want to comment, if you want to leave some messaging, they will be very, very happy to film you. I also am going to announce the winner of today's goodie bag. So the best answer to the question is Tony Larks. Tony, if you can visit the live stream booth on your way to the networking reception, you will be able to pick up your gift. I'd also like to thank those of you who have joined us via the live stream. Obviously, we can't pass you a nice beverage or anything else now, but thank you very much. So to all of you here, thank you for being a wonderful crowd and for spending the afternoon with us. I look forward to having some conversations with some of you as we go into our networking. But for now, that's it from me. Thank you very much.